this, Bill?
It's not mine.
These are from Ann?
Orange.
Wow.
Steal it from the kids.
The whole bag.
Yeah. Leftover Halloween candy.
Perfect.
Is Mariana?
3 minutes.
Take a look at
That's pretty good.
Right over there, that pink.
That's a special slip.
Yeah.
Recording in progress.
Yeah. She always seems to have something to say.
Scott, do you want me to put your town manager's report after the personnel item? After which part? The personnel item? Yeah, that's fine. Just gonna switch those two.
And there is another change on the agenda. Cam Sinclair, towards the bottom, they will not be here tonight. They'll be here at the next meeting.
Okay.
You got them?
Yep, I see it. So they'll be at the next meeting.
Correct.
Hi, how you doing?
Hi.
Excuse me, Marianne, you got seconds to spare.
I'm sorry?
You have seconds to spare. 10.
Not for no counting. Oh, thank you. Is that 5?
Yeah.
Someone's alarm's going off. Well, it is 5 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. Start with some minutes.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the October 23rd regular meeting minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any
Abstained.
opposed? Announcements. The select board will meet on the following dates. This is a long list, so buckle up. Monday, December 4th, which will be our first budget work session at 1 p.m. Monday, December 11th, which is our second budget work session at 3:30 p.m. Also on Monday, December 11th, our regular meeting right here at 5 p.m. Then on Monday, December 18th, our third budget work session at 1 p.m. Fast forwarding into the new year, does that mean we have one meeting left between now and the end of the year? It's
We
actually
do have
regular.
one on November 27th that is not listed as well.
Oh, we have a meeting on November 27th right here at 5 p.m. It's like, wait a second. So then January 8th, budget finalization meeting, which will begin at 1:30 p.m. And then the first public hearing for the budget will be January 22nd at 5:15 p.m., which will be during a regular board meeting, I assume. Doesn't note that, but I think that's correct. And then we'll have a second hearing for the budget on February 8th. If needed, assuming that anybody shows up to the first one and has questions, we'll have a follow-up, and that will be on February 8th at 5:15 p.m. Town offices will be closed on Thursday, November 23rd and Friday, November 24th in observance of the Thanksgiving holiday. Any citizens wishing to be listed on the Select Board's agenda should notify Town Hall before noon, the Thursday before the scheduled meeting. All meetings will be held upstairs in Town Hall and will be held by Zoom. Zoom information can be found on the town's website, plymouth-nh.org. org. One chairman's comment, the Memorial Day, no, not Memorial Day, Veterans Day ceremony that we had on Saturday went off very nicely. I wanted to explicitly thank the Recreation Department and Kelsey, who coordinates all of those efforts to make that a really nice event. But it was good this year. It was cold and it was windy, but it was very nice. Thanks.
Wasn't it, Mary Ann?
Very cold.
That's it for my comments, but I'm going to skip over the town manager's report for the moment. We have a personnel item here today. We have a new police officer, Officer Rachel Collins.
Alex, do you want to come forward? Rachel?
Good evening. I would like to introduce Rachel Collins. She is our first ever 13th police officer here in the town of Plymouth. So Rachel's position will make it so we're full staffed. And Rachel will be attending the New Hampshire Full-Time Police Academy in January, which is 16 weeks. And after completion of that, she'll come back and continue her field training program, which she's currently in right now. And she'll be a full-fledged member of the police department. So we're very excited. And her family is here, and her husband and children would like to pin her uniform.
Sounds fantastic. Welcome to the force.
Move.
Wow.
Get in there, Ann.
I'm trying. Nice job.
Well done.
Just a couple comments with regards to Rachel joining the force. We welcome you on behalf of the town of Plymouth. We're glad that you've chosen the town of Plymouth to start your law enforcement career, and hopefully you'll have many years here with us. But one thing I think the board should know is that there's the CALEER, which is the Commission on Law Enforcement Accreditation, and one of the standards in order to meet the CALEER accreditation is you have to have 30% of your force should be female. And we do, fortunately, meet that standard, which says a lot about the diversity in the culture in the town of Plymouth. So congratulations and welcome.
How long has it been since we've been fully staffed?
Long time.
It's been a bit. That's also very exciting. And also, I think, speaks a lot to both the leadership and the culture of our police force right now, which is great. With that, do you want to move on to the town manager's report?
Sure, absolutely. Good evening. A few things to update with regards to things that are happening within town government. The town hall HVAC, as you know, we went out to RFP for a proposal to replace the HVAC system in town hall. We did have two vendors that came and did a walkthrough with us on November 1st. They are reviewing the complexity of town hall and the engineering of an HVAC system here. The proposals were going to be due back November 20th. They've asked for an extension to have additional engineering personnel come in. So we've given them to December 1st, Friday, December 1st, to submit their proposals back to the town. Town financial audit, Jim Roberge is with us tonight and will speak in a few moments. We thought it was important that we have Jim come in, who is the auditor for the town of Plymouth, as a third-party contractor, and speak to the board. So if there was any questions, concerns, or comments, and to allow Jim the opportunity to go through what he does with the audit and the interviews that are conducted and what is reviewed. Welfare Director's report. During the month of October, Mary Ann provided assistance to over 40 individuals in need of assistance and/or resources. During this period, Mary Ann met with individuals in person as well as over the telephone. Mary Ann worked with landlords, New Hampshire Electric Co-op, and state agencies in finding relief and resolution for individuals that she met with. Downtown Halloween Build a Scarecrow event. I would like to thank all the businesses, agencies, and town departments that participated in this year's Downtown Halloween Build a Scarecrow event, with special recognition to the recreation team for all of their hard work in organizing such a successful event. This seems to grow each year, and we look forward to next year's event. Ann and I handed out candy out in front of Town Hall, and I'm guessing we saw at least 500 or 600 children that came through trick-or-treating, so it was a great event.
Did you run out of candy?
We did, right at 5:30.
Nice. Good for you.
Plymouth Hometown Holiday Celebration. The celebration will start on Friday, December 1st, and run through Sunday, December 3rd, with many activities scheduled. The Hometown Holiday Parade will take place on Saturday, December 2nd at 5 p.m. The committee for the holiday parade, the steering committee, would like to know if the Board of Selectmen would like to march in the holiday parade. I'll give you time to think about that and make a decision, but I do have the permit application from the steering committee for the board to sign tonight, and we did receive the state parade permit today. So after this is signed, we are good to move forward with that.
Do we know the weather outlook for that day? That might impact our.
It's going to be
gonna be a-
cold.
Is it rainy, icy?
No, 45 and
Very nice.
very calm winds.
Excellent.
We've done it in the past, eh?
Yeah.
Do it again.
Mostly we do it, yeah.
Just to echo Zach's comments with regards to the Veterans Day ceremony, took place on Saturday, November 11th. Kelsey Bowden deserves great recognition for organizing the ceremony. It was done very professionally. It was done with grace, and there was a great turnout that day, even though, like Zach said, the weather was cold, the wind was fierce, but everybody stayed through, the band, the one thing that we hadn't had before that I thought was a great addition was the Plymouth Regional High School choir, or men's choir, or choir that came and sang. And I just thought that was very nicely done, and they did a superb job.
They did.
Tax deed auction update. As you know, 34 Fairgrounds Road goes up for tax deed auction this Saturday, November 18th. There was a walkthrough on the property Thursday, November 9th, and attended that walkthrough with the auctioneers. We had 35 to 40 people that were interested, as well as others who have contacted the auctioneers with regards to the property. So the public auction will be held Saturday, November 18th at 3 p.m. here at Town Hall. Budget process update, Tuesday, November 7th and Wednesday, November 8th. The Advisory Budget Committee met with department heads in learning more about their budget requests and needs. Additionally, the CIP Committee met on Tuesday, October 24th to discuss the request for the 24-25 Capital Improvement Program. On Thursday, November 2nd, the Planning Board reviewed the Capital Improvement Program and moved it forward to a public hearing on this Thursday, November 16th, at their regularly scheduled meeting. Plymouth State University update. I will be meeting with Jessica Dutile next Monday, the 20th. On the cluster project, we've met on Thursday, November 2nd. The town representation of the committee met and discussed the goals, timeline, project scope, character of Plymouth, and possible grants and funding. The next phase of the project is to bring the town representation and the PSU team together to further discuss the evolutions of the project. That meeting will take place this Friday, November 17th at 10 a.m. at the White Mountain Museum on Highland Street.
Scott, I hate to interrupt, but talking about the economic development, one of the concerns that I shared, my understanding was it was somewhat like our last economic development, where it encompassed the whole town, what we need, those type of things. But it seems like it's more, and I know it's collaborative between PSU and the town, but the main focus is going to be, or the only focus is going to be Main Street.
Oh.
I wasn't sure if,
I don't think that will be the only focus. I think what we'll do, and John is here, and John can correct me if I'm misleading, is really to look at the master plan overall and see where we need to focus. The Main Street area is of concern of bringing it more up to date and having a specific master plan for the downtown area.
Right.
Because we don't really talk about that in our overall master plan. So I won't say that's not the only, the direct focus, but I think there's other areas that need to be discussed when we talk on Friday with regards to what that project scope is going to include.
it seemed to me we would, once again, I'm looking at it from the town perspective. It seemed to me we would potentially go over the master plan and prioritize, and once again, looking at it from the town perspective, I'm not sure that's the goal, and maybe I'm just not seeing we should be collaborating and see what's beneficial for both PSU and the town.
And I think we'll have a better understanding after our meeting on Friday.
So we'll talk more about this on Friday, and I mean, some of the initial push from the university was more focused on downtown, but I think if we all come together and agree that we could be more broadly focused than that, I think there's nothing stopping us.
Right.
So I guess some of my own statements that pushed it more towards the downtown, we're coming from the university's own perspective.
Sure.
Coming into this. And I think there is a lot to think about there, because that is a major source of interaction between the university and the town. But, I mean, I don't think there's anything stopping us from expanding that scope.
Sure, I'm just not the, I don't disagree, I'm just not sure if it's the biggest bang for the town's buck. So just wanted to share my 2 cents on that. Thanks, John.
What's the rough timeline that we're looking at?
Rough timeline really hasn't been completely ironed out yet.
Come up to the
Sure.
Sure.
Thanks, John.
So the rough timeline, just for kicking things off in terms of the university side, where there's actually teaching collaborations and experiential learning projects and stuff going on, that kickoff is, we're hoping for fall of 2024. In terms of just getting courses scheduled and getting collaborations going, that's the earliest feasible time for that to happen, which leaves us a pretty quick timeline to get this next month or two, a kind of set of focus points in place and possible course collaborations in place that we can start scheduling for. I mean, course scheduling already happens, in basically the beginning of next semester, so that has to be in place really soon. So from now until January, we'll be figuring out what those collaborations look like, what the focus is, what the coursework is, how that relates to the town, and then we'll be kind of actually planning the actual details of that rollout in the spring and into the summer, and then for the actual work to get going, at least from the university perspective, in the fall. Beyond that, there's really no kind of scope of work in terms of a closing date. What I would love to see personally is if we can get some funding, and that's a big if, and grants you never quite know, that we could actually keep this rolling kind of quite a long time, because I think there's a lot of interesting collaborations to happen on the university side for experiential learning, on the town side just to really kind of have interesting stuff and economic development happening here. So we don't really have a closing date, but in terms of a kickoff date for real work starting beyond the planning process, it will be the fall of 2024.
Gotcha. Thanks, John.
Yep.
And last, our favorite topic, the downtown drainage project. It is wrapping up and coming to an end. Probably one of the most important pieces is with regards to the soils. We've talked about that the last couple meetings. On November 8th, and June Hammond Rowan and I met with Josh McAllister from HEB. The sampling of the soils on South Main Street more specifically in front of the dry cleaners, produce signs of background level contamination. The John Turner Group and HRB are consulting with the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services and Department of Transportation to see how these soils have to be handled, and is there a method to reuse these soils, which there is a good possibility that there is. This phase of the project would take place in the spring of 2024, when the road is being rebuilt. At that point, the construction is wrapping up currently with the final phases of the drainage being installed from Highland Street down past by the Lucky Dog, so to speak. Our hope is in 2 weeks that the project will be closed for the winter, and we would not see any additional construction until the spring of 2024, at which time I have asked HEB and Greene's Construction for a timeline and a schedule that will occur next spring. So once we have this information back with regards to the soils, we will come back and provide you with detailed information on how the soils can be reused, what the possible cost associated with the handling of these soils will be. But until that time, we don't have that information right now. And that,
Are they planning, or is anybody planning to do Main Street in front of our businesses downtown? Or I thought there was going to be like at least a paving of all the.
well, that was to be the case, and New Hampshire Department of Transportation came in last week and said
Okay.
they're not requiring that to be paved, but they are requiring all the trenches to be patched to level grade.
All right.
So that will be occurring over the next week.
Okay, so they're not doing it by the end of November, obviously.
No.
That's too bad.
Will they do that in the spring?
In the spring, that road will be completely boxed out and rebuilt, along with the sidewalks.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that concludes my report, unless there's any questions that anybody has.
None from me.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome, Neil.
I did miss my opportunity at the top of the meeting to acknowledge the civic students that are in attendance this evening, which is, it's that time of year, we get civic students. Because I expect this meeting to run exceptionally long due to budgets and such, anybody want me to sign a slip of paper? You should still hang out a little bit, don't leave yet. I'm being nice and not sticking you here for 3 hours.
Yeah, I signed and gave back to her.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, let them off easy.
Of all the nights to choose, tonight was probably maybe a bad choice.
Here, we'll take some over here,
Yeah,
girls, if
you
you
can
want to
come
come
over
this
here.
way, we can have,
I can do a couple. It's okay.
oh, she even gives you a pen.
I have, thank you.
Sorry, Zach.
You're welcome.
Today is the 13th. That is correct. 23.
Thank you.
Pick the one with the longest name.
It's okay.
I was wondering what was taking so long. Yeah, okay.
Got off
It's
easy.
true, yeah. I was 17
Ted W.
characters. is
I know,
last
that's
name.
what I was thinking after he's.
Oh, absolutely.
Teaches people to think and understand.
Current day events, there's nothing more important.
Not the neatest writing, but
All right, so, again, thank you all for being here. We're glad you're here.
We're gonna stay
Review of the 2022, 2023 audit with Jim.
Jim, would you come up, please?
Certainly.
Mason, you're gonna hide in the back? Okay.
Thank you for having me. My name's Jim Roberge, from the accounting firm of Roberge and Company. We're out of Franklin. I'd like to say this is probably going to be the most interesting part of your meeting, but I probably can't promise that. First of all, I'd like to lead off by saying that we did have any audit concerns, or we had any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies that we identified during our audit, you would have known about that before this point. So we're here just tonight to go over the audited financial statements, explain our process that we go through a little bit to you so you have a better understanding of what we actually do, and then open the floor to questions if you have any questions on your financial statements at all. I'll try and keep it brief. I mean, I could go on as long as you wanted to, but we'll keep it as brief as we can. I assume you all have your audited financial statements in front of
Yes,
you?
thank you.
Okay. In there's an auditor's opinion, and that auditor's opinion actually explains the responsibilities of both you and us as the auditor. And in there, management's responsibilities really are the preparation of these financial statements. Although we do assist in that preparation, you actually take responsibility for these financial statements. And you're also responsible for implementing internal controls to make sure that these financial statements are presented fairly. Our job is to provide an opinion on these financial statements. And in order to do that, we actually, through the audit process, we assess risk. And our audits are designed to focus on those risk areas. And I'll go through, I'm going to go through the financial statements themselves so that you have an idea as to how they're organized and how they're put together. The financial statements are in a standard format. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board establishes those standards. And in particular, these financial statements here were established by GASB 34, which was probably 25 years ago now. Ann probably knows because she's got all the standards memorized. And it defines the format, it defines what's in here and how they're supposed to be organized and what the reporting focus is on the financial statements. So if you'd like to just flip to the table of contents, we'll go through that real quick. The first piece is, as I mentioned, it's the auditor's opinion. This is what ties you and I together. These are your financial statements. When we issue an opinion, in this case, your opinion's we call an unqualified audit opinion. That means we also take some responsibility for these financial statements as well by saying that we believe that they're representative of the activity for that particular period. In this instance, it's the year ended June 30th, 2023. I'm going to have you go back now to the last section of the table of contents, which is the other supplementary information. I like to look at these financial statements from back to front because they seem to make more sense. The other supplementary information in there is all of your individual funds that you account for and that are reported for in these financial statements. So all of, in what we define them as is non-major funds, and as a quantitative determination as to what's a major fund and a non-major fund. And in your case, there's a number of funds. If you look in the back, there's library funds, you have a grant fund, you've got an airport fund, police detail funds, conservation funds. A lot of these have been established by some type of budgetary or statutory authority that's been approved at town meeting at one point or another. And DRA keeps what they call a master file of all of these articles that you've adopted over the years, so that you know. But these funds all back here are all what we call non-major funds based on a quantitative determination of their size. As you move up in the table of contents, the next section is your required supplementary information. These are some things that GASB requires that are reported. One of them in there is a budgetary comparison schedule, which actually provides your general fund on pages 67 to 69. And it gives you a very summarized snapshot of what your estimated revenues were and what your appropriations were for that particular year, and what you actually received and what you actually expended against those items. And it's on a budgetary basis, so it's different than the financial statements that we're going to talk about when we move up forward in the financials as well. So you should be able to look at these, and they should be familiar. You know, you're looking at what you received in revenues and what you expended against what was actually voted and appropriated at town meeting. There may be a difference between what the voted amount was at town meeting, because you may have legally brought forward encumbrances, continuing appropriations, or other budgetary authority that hadn't been spent in that year but was legally authorized to be brought forward and spent in the new year. So that's why there's two columns. There's an original budget and a final budget. The final budget would include any of those encumbrances or spending authority that you carried forward from the prior year. The next section under basic financial statements, this is where all the guts of your financials are. And it's actually in, I'm going to say, two pieces. The first piece, which is government-wide financial statements. The second piece is what we called fund-based financial statements. Your fund-based financial statements, if you want to just take a look at page 28. You'll see that on there is your general fund, which is required by the standards to be reported as what we call a major fund, and also your EDA project, which is determined to be a major fund because of its size, basically. And then the rest are non-major funds, that column. Those are the ones out back that I referred to in the combining schedule. So if you look at the total column from those non-major funds in the combining schedules out back, that's what you're going to see up here in this non-major column. And they're shown as just a combining group, and that's the, those are the totals that we actually give our opinion on. Okay? So we've gone from budgetary out back to fund-based in the middle. And the last piece of financial statements that's way up front is called government-wide, and those start on page 26. And if you look at these, they're probably not going to be recognizable at all. What these are is all of your governmental funds that you account for, your non-major funds out back, your major funds up in the middle, and they combine them all together. They put them in one column, and they add something that's missing from the other two sets of financial statements. They're adding your long-term debt and all of your capital assets. So your fund-based financials in the middle do not include any long-term debt or capital assets, because as you purchase assets, you expense them against your budget. As you pay your long-term debt, you expense it against your budget. For the government-wide, it's treated more like a commercial entity. It's a full accrual set of financial statements for your town in totality, and it includes your capital assets and it includes your long-term debt, so you can see what you have for long-term assets and long-term debt for the town as a whole. And there's no funds associated with this, and that's why they call it a government-wide set of financial statements. And we'll go through a couple of the pieces in there just so that you have an idea what's going on with those things. Other than that, there's a set of there's some notes to the financial statement. They describe what your accounting policies and procedures are as far as financial reporting are. Those start on page 74. I'm sorry, page 35 through 65. So there's 30 pages of notes to the financial statements which describe particular account balances and policies and procedures that you have. There's also a little crosswalk between each of these three different sections of your financial statements. So between your budgetary general fund set of financial statements out back and the fund-based one, there's a little crosswalk that describes the differences between them. And then also between your fund-based financial statements and your government-wide, there's another crosswalk that describes what the differences are between those sets of financial statements. And those, you'll see, they're called reconciliations. There's a reconciliation on page 30, and there's a reconciliation on page 29 that just describes what those are for you. So if you have any questions on those at some point, then, I'd be glad to answer them. I don't think it's something that we need to go over, tonight. And that's how your financial statements are organized. If you want to flip to the government-wide piece just real quick, I want to point out a couple of numbers in there for you. That's on page 26. And again, it's a consolidated financial statement that provides, a snapshot of the entire town, without differentiating between funds. And there's some real big numbers in there. And I want to focus you on the bottom at first. There's under net position, there's an unrestricted number that's a big negative. It's like a $6 million negative number. That's because you have to, under the standards, pick up your piece of the state retirement system's net unfunded liability. And that's up under liabilities. You'll see that number under net pension liability. It's $7.8 million. And what that is it's if you took your contribution to the New Hampshire retirement system for the pension portion for the year, and you calculated that what your percentage is of all the members of the New Hampshire retirement system, and you multiplied that percentage times the unfunded liability that the pension system has, that would be your piece. So it's a huge number. I think the entire unfunded liability is like 150 million or something like that. It's a huge number. So when you take your percentage of it, which is just a small percentage, less than 1%, it comes out to 7.8. And you're required to put that on your financial statements. And that's why your net position shows as a negative. Your unrestricted net position is a negative because you're picking up that piece. Another big piece of that is right above that's called OPEB obligations. That's your portion of what the medical subsidy is that New Hampshire retirement system members receive. And it's calculated exactly the same way. Whatever your contribution is for the current year for medical subsidies to the New Hampshire retirement system, you take and figure your percentage based on the entire membership of the New Hampshire retirement system, and that's your liability that you have to pick up. And that's a government accounting standard change that's only been active for about 10 or 12 years now. But I wanted to point that out because if you look at that big negative number and you want to say, where does that come from? It comes from those two big numbers. And it's nothing that you can pay off. It's nothing that you can fund because if you're a cost sharing, the New Hampshire retirement system is a cost sharing plan. So if you contributed to it, it would be allocated to all the other members. So you wouldn't be paying off anything. That $7.8 million would still be sitting there. It'd still be your liability. Okay. Let's flip back to something that's a little bit more recognizable. Let's go to page 28.
Sorry to interrupt. Is that an indication of a long-term concern for the state?
It is, but I think a lot of it was generated by the medical subsidy that they implemented, because they were actually making money for a long time and they didn't have this unfunded liability. And they were earning more than they were anticipating on through their actuarial valuations for the pension system. And so they decided, let's put some money into a special fund, and then they started to use that for this medical subsidy for retirees, which I believe is not available to new members anymore. It's only to older members of the retirement system. And then interest rates started to go down, the economy started to go bad, and now they were estimating that they were going to make more on their investments than they actually were. And so now it flipped over so that they actually owed more based on actual evaluations for both the pension and the medical subsidy piece. So it's all economy driven. If they're able to make more on their investments and they're able to fund all of their liabilities, then that number will go down quickly. But at this point, we came through a recession. The liability became unfunded, and the Government Accounting Standards Board said, "Well, there's a lot of debt out there, and the members of these retirement systems need to start reporting on that on their financial statements so that the readers can see what's going on."
Gotcha. Thank you.
But very good question. Page 28, balance sheet. Let's just focus on your general fund. This is what we're all mostly concerned with. It's what DRA is concerned with when they're setting tax rates. It's your fund balance that is of most concern. And so if you look at your asset side, you have $13 million in assets. A lot of it is cash and property taxes receivable. For liabilities, you have amounts that are due to other funds. And in this particular case, you owe money to one of your capital projects, which you have committed to that project, and that's the EDA project. And what we did this past year was we actually transferred that money out of your general fund, so that it doesn't have the opportunity to get lost in your unassigned fund balance, which is used to set your tax rate. So in prior years, that money would be sitting in your general fund balance, and when we would restrict it so that it wouldn't be used to offset your rate. But if you forget to restrict that money, it could potentially be used, and then you wouldn't have it to use for your project. So we actually transferred that money over to your project, so it's sitting in fund balance in your EDA project. And you can see that down the bottom. There's $2 million that's already sitting in that EDA project. That is the town's share of that project. And it's come out of your general fund, so you don't have to worry about using it to offset your tax rates. There are some things in there called deferred inflows and outflows. The deferred revenues is primarily your property tax billings that you've done for the subsequent year. You actually bill them before year end, so we defer that money because it's used for your subsequent year's budget. And then down under your fund balance, you have some non-spendable money, which is prepaid expenses that you've already paid for. So we pull that out of your fund balance so that you don't use it. You have some committed fund balances, and these are primarily your capital reserves and your expendable trust funds that you have. The standards require that they're reported in your general fund, and that's why you see them here. They're also included in your cash and your investments up in the top in your balance sheet. And then there's some some signed fund balances, and those are encumbrances. Those are what we mentioned before. These are either purchase orders or board authorized expenditures from prior year unspent appropriations, and we bring those forward into the subsequent year to use them against any expenditures in that year. And your unassigned fund balance, which is what's available for rate setting purposes, after we pulled all those other pieces out, it's only $25,000. So your unassigned fund balance is not a very significant fund balance at this point. But that's what you have to use if you had to. Righty. Let's just quickly move back to page 67, which is your budgetary comparison. We'll go through that real quick. 67.
Which page?
67. And this one here is just, it compares what you estimated you were going to collect for revenues during the year and what you actually did collect for revenues during the year. And fund balance is considered an estimated revenue because you can use that for rate setting purposes and for leveling. And overall, you had $432,000 more in revenues than you had anticipated for the year. We actually did put in there, excuse me, the $1.8 million that you were authorized to bond, because you actually did bond that prior to year end. It was for your 23-24 year, but the authorization was there, and you did it before year end. So we showed that in there in your budget as well, just so that you could see that that was estimated. And that money was, and Ann, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was all designated for the EDA project.
It was.
So all of that was really transferred over to the EDA project fund so that it's not in your general fund right now. Next page is with your appropriations, what was budgeted versus what you actually spent. And flip to the second of those two pages. You were actually underexpended by $1 million in 2023. Your public safety lines were underexpended by approximately $300,000, and then some of your capital outlays, which include some of the encumbrances and continuing appropriations that you carried forward. Those were underexpended by a couple of $100,000 as well. But that explains to you, where you stand on your your actual spending versus what you had appropriated for that year. And these groupings are, if something doesn't look real familiar, the groupings are based on your appropriation report, your MS 232 that goes to the state. And so we use those summary numbers here and group them. When you get budget reports, you probably get them in a little bit more detail than you would here, but these are basically by function. And I think that's it for your financials right now. If you have some questions on those, then we'll take those in just a minute, but I just want to go through our process real well. I mentioned earlier that it's a risk-based process. So what we do is we try to identify areas that we believe are risky. For you, actually for us, revenues have to be required. Our standards say that we have to consider revenues in a risky area. So we do testing on revenues. We test property taxes. We test all of your warrants that were issued during the year to make sure that that's what you reported for revenues. We test motor vehicle registrations by making selections of motor vehicle registrations. We do the same with ambulance billings. We actually will make selections from all of the incident reports or the runs that were made during the year and follow the billings all the way through to collection. And from all of that testing, we didn't identify anything that we considered a significant misstatement in any of your revenue numbers.
And you're testing roughly 90% of the transactions, correct?
No, we are not.
I thought we were at 90%. That was,
For expenditures, we probably are, yes. On the revenue side, we're probably at about 77% of your total revenues through the individual transaction tests that we do. We also do what we call analytic work, and we compare one year to the next to see if there's any significant differences. So we're testing 100%, if you want to look at it that way, but individual transaction testings. But when I say transaction testing, not every single transaction, but we do selective transaction selecting. And so property taxes account for probably 52% of all of your revenue, and we basically test all of that. Our selections of individual properties, just to look at the billings for individual properties based on the assessments and the collections on those all the way to deposit, is a selection number. It's not 100%. But the warrants that you sign, we make sure that those are all recorded, and then if they haven't been collected, then they're in accounts receivable as well. So we do look at all of the warrants that you've issued and you've signed for the year. Payroll transactions, just based on its size and the number of transactions, we consider that a risky area. So we actually make selections of individuals. We'll go back and we'll review their authorized pay rates or their contract amount if they're contracted employees. And then we'll select individual employees and we'll make sure that those were the rates that were used for individual payroll periods. And again, we didn't find any problems in those areas. We actually compare payroll from year to year on a percentage basis using data analytics as well. We test the total payroll to total expenditures. We agree all of the health insurance expenditures based on the invoices for each of the individual employees. We test your total retirement expense, which is a fairly simple calculation. I mean, we know the rates that you have to pay, and they're significant rates now, by the way. So there's nothing that we found in our payroll testing that we believe that you should be aware of. Expenditure transactions are obviously a significant area as well. That's where most of your activity is. We select individual transactions. We follow the whole authorization process through. We make sure that they're authorized in accordance with your policy. We make sure that we, examine manifests that the selectmen have signed off on, which is committed to the treasurer, who then signs off on checks. And again, it's a selective basis. We select individual transactions. We'll also select account groups, total accounts, to make sure that account in total that we believe is correct. So, like debt service, we can look at your debt service payments, we can agree it to a maturity schedule and make sure that those numbers are correct. And then we test all of your balance sheet accounts. We test cash. We make sure that your bank reconciliations are okay, that they agree to what you reported for cash. We test accounts receivable. We'll agree them to subsequent receipts in the subsequent period. We'll test all of your accounts payable numbers. We'll agree those to disbursements that you made in subsequent periods as well. And then any other balance sheet items that you have, if you had accrued expenses, we would test those to make sure that those are accurate. Or if you deferred any revenues for any purpose, we would take a look at those. And, for the most part, your receivables, your cash, and your accounts payable are the biggest balance sheet items that you have, and we test all of those. Our standards don't require us to. We just feel better testing all of them. And it seems to work out really well for us. So, again, in summary, you've got a very good management crew. They do a really good job of reconciling. They're very proactive in making sure that, the numbers that they present are accurate. And we're very comfortable, with the management crew that you have. So, if there's any questions on the financials or on procedures that we do, I'll be glad to answer any questions. I know it's, there's a lot there to absorb. And, if you have a chance in the future and you want to take a look at some of those things and you say, hey, I've got a question, feel free to call us at any time. Send us an email. Both Ann and Scott have our contact information, and we'd be glad to answer any questions for you at any time.
Great. You mentioned the unassigned fund balance being small as
Yes.
a concern. How concerned should we be about that?
Well, a healthy unassigned fund balance gives you the opportunity to level any blips in your tax rates, if you have them. I don't believe you've ever had a significant fund balance. And if you did, it was a lot of times used to absorb maybe the overages from maybe your school districts. It's always a question, what would be a good number to have for an unassigned fund balance? And I think DRA gives you a rule of thumb. It's like between 10 and 15% of your current year appropriations that you should maintain for an unassigned fund balance.
So that would suggest we would have 1.3 million in
Yes.
there as opposed to 22,000.
Yes.
Which is what we did when we implemented the new fund balance policy, is to implement that policy to work towards that recommended goal.
We had been growing it pretty consistently over the past 4 years, but the downtown drainage project is, so we've encountered one of those blips is effectively what we're saying. So we had actually built that up. We weren't at 1.3 million, but we were on a path there. But the downtown drainage project has caused us to reset that 4 years of progress.
I
Now,
believe,
the number that you're gonna see on the MS1 that you're gonna sign tonight is gonna be 313,000.
Okay, so that's better than the 22,000 that's here.
Part of that is because you have
Good point.
taxes that have not been collected yet, but you can still count those as revenue, and you can still count those. So when you see that number tonight,
Okay, it's not going to match.
it's not gonna match. I just wanna make sure that you're aware of that when you see the MS5.
no, that's a good point. Your financial statements, we're required, or you're required. One of the standards indicates that for property taxes not collected within 60 days of year end, you can't report those as revenues. Although in New Hampshire, we don't have any risk because of our lien and our deeding process. Everything is essentially collected, so we don't have any collection issues or uncollectible taxes. But the standards say that we have to, and for this year, there was, what was it, Ann, $305,000 that we had to, that we couldn't report as tax revenue, property tax revenue in this year, and that affects that fund balance. So if you were to go back and do it on a budgetary basis, we would add that back. And so you would actually have probably $330,000 of unassigned fund balance to use.
So as Jim has pointed out, the other reason we implemented a delinquent tax policy is to make sure that we're addressing those 300 and some odd $1,000.
Turning it
And
into
this
real
Saturday-
money and not theoretical
And
money.
this Saturday, we'll turn some of that into real money after that property sells on 34 Fairgrounds Road. So I think we've taken steps to establish a fund balance as well as the delinquent tax problem that Plymouth sees.
The other thing is some of these long-term projects that you have that you have to kick in a town match or some type of a town portion. Historically, we've just kind of kept that in the general fund balance, so we kind of overinflated that. And that's why for this drainage project, we actually said, okay, this is what we've committed to this project. Let's take it, because it's available. Let's take it and shift it over there so it's not sitting in our general fund unassigned fund balance.
That's a lot clearer to understand when you look at it, having it that way.
Yep.
It was a good move.
So if we hadn't done that transfer this year, you'd have, $2 million, another $2 million over in your general fund balance. But it would have been committed or restricted for that project.
Right.
However, if we missed that and didn't restrict that, and it ended up sliding down into your unassigned, and you said, oh geez, we need extra money in order to keep our tax rate at the same level, and you used it, now you wouldn't have it for the project.
Right.
Okay, so that's why I think we all agreed, Scott and Ann, when we talked about it, we said it makes more sense for us to just transfer that money out. And, the 1.8 million that you borrowed, that actually was realized. So it was sitting in fund balance, and we had it available, and we transferred. If it was something that we didn't have available, that hadn't already been collected or recognized in our general fund, we wouldn't transfer it at that point. But because that was recognized, we said, let's take it and transfer it.
Yeah.
If it was to be raised through tax dollars, and we had already raised it during the year, it doesn't make any sense to leave it in fund balance when it's got to go over to that project anyways. So we'd pull that out as well. So it's the funding sources, whether it's through property taxes or whether it's through some type of a debt. If we've taken it, we've already recognized it, and it's restricted for another project, let's get it out of the general fund and put it where it belongs, and that's what we did with those.
And then the special audit, we didn't have to have.
Yes, when we started this year, we actually had you sign a new engagement letter that said you were required to have a single audit. What a single audit entails is if you spend collectively over $750,000 in any year of total federal funding sources, then you have to have a single audit, and we have to test individual programs for compliance based on what the Office of Management Budget tells us we have to test for. And when we started this year, a lot of your EDA funding is federal funding. And when it first started, the percentage that you were going to contribute, or the federal dollar percentage that was going to be contributed was a lot higher. But as the project cost went up, that federal funding percentage went down. So the amount that you spent originally was going to be a lot more federal dollars, but because of the total project cost went up, the amount you spent ended up being a lot smaller in federal money, and so we fell below that $750,000 threshold.
I think 25,000.
Yeah, but not an awful lot.
It was very
And
close.
the reason why we mention that is it's a significant amount of work, because we actually have to spend more time on that federal piece than we do on your entire general fund budget.
What, is that a separate engagement with you
No,
all?
that's why they call it a single audit. It's combined in your regular audit, but we do more compliance testing for the federal funds.
I guess my question was, would that have increased the cost?
Yes,
of our audit?
absolutely, yes.
Do you know roughly by how much?
$6,000,
We saved a little bit of money.
yes.
You know, we
So the engagement letter that you signed,
a lot more than we expected, but
you saved $6,000 on the engagement letter that you signed by us, bumping that down and falling below that $750,000 threshold. I think you're gonna probably meet it next year, though.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, caveat, the Office of Management and Budget is looking at raising that dollar threshold from $750,000 to a higher number. I'm not sure where that is right yet, and I'm not sure what the effective date of it will be, but it's likely going to be at least $1 million, which we'll probably hit anyways.
Right, yeah.
I was hoping that they'd bump it up to like $2 million,
Million would be good.
because, we have a lot of school districts that are in that you know, $750 to $1.5 million range. And it's a lot of money for them to spend for, you know, for that compliance testing that has to be done. Especially when it's not a risky area. I mean, our small school districts aren't spending an awful lot of federal dollars compared to big cities like Boston and Los Angeles and Detroit, and that's where the risk is, but we have to do the same exact procedures as they do.
And Jim is also the auditor for the school district.
Okay.
So, and he's been doing both
Yes.
some time, so if there's any questions in the future about the school district, I'm sure he would answer those for you as well, if you had them.
Any other questions for Jim?
Pretty clear.
Thank you. We
Thank you very
appreciate
much
it.
for having me. And again, if you have questions, feel free to reach out.
Thank you.
Well, we would be remiss not to congratulate Anne for all your hard work that leads to a clean
There's a lot of people,
audit like
it's
that.
a team effort, we get through it, between
your
Linda
team,
and
though.
Carol, and, you know, we all do it, so.
Thank you. And thanks to all of them as well. Well, that takes us to the MS1.
So the MS1 is right after the audit. Scott, did you want to talk about this? Or do
Go
you-
ahead.
Okay. So what you're going to see there, you're going to see the 2022 MS1, and the significant value that we're looking at here is on the very bottom, the 23B. The value of the town that we set the tax rate with last year was 472, almost 473 million. This year, because of the revow, the value has gone to 711,336. 711 million, I'm sorry, 336. So we are, this is the last part that we need to submit to DRA so that we can actually set the tax rate. And it requires the board to sign off on this.
Hopefully, we'll be able to work with DRA over the next couple weeks to have the
Yes.
tax rate set.
Yep. I didn't print out the entire report, let's see. You can see on page 6 of 6 if you wanted to know what we get for pilots, Spear and Southern New Hampshire. Those are the two nonprofits that contribute.
What's Southern New Hampshire? Is that whole village or what?
That's
No.
the housing out on Fairgrounds Road.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
And then now that we have the inspection from the 25 properties that we talked about last week, there is 5 out of those that will get prorated tax bills that will provide tax revenue back to the town.
This does not show the value of the non-tax or tax exempt properties?
It does. If you look at, exemptions, I believe. Under
So we got
exemptions.
2G.
Oh, I'm sorry. 1H
One.
and 1I at the very top. Tax exempt and non-taxable land, 26,192,000.
That's the old value.
That's for 22, yep. And that is now 53 million, and that's land. And then you go down to 2G, and you look at the buildings, sorry.
Which is 276.
276 million,
It is.
277 million.
Yep.
We should pass a bill to see if we can get pilots for all
You're gonna pass a bill for what?
that. Never mind.
Okay,
We have a senator here, so.
That's on you, Bill.
that's right.
That's totally on you, Bill.
So just for anybody who's listening and wondering, because it's a common question, the numbers we're looking at is the total taxable land is 205 million, the non-taxable land is 53 million, and then total taxable buildings is 506 million, and the non-taxable is 276 million. So all totaled, that's, again, 711 taxable, and then maybe another 330 million untaxable. So roughly 25 to 30% range of our town is untaxable. It's a lot.
Yeah. And then if you look at what you have in current use, it even takes it that much higher.
Right. Any motions around the MS1?
I'll make a motion that we as a board sign the MS1.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
You have the original, okay.
I do. Just that one spot. Senator Sue Prentice, who has sat very patiently through all of our budget discussions. Please, yeah. Sitting sounds lovely. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me, and I've met a few of you before, certainly the town manager, and I have known each other for a number of years, as well as I've had the opportunity to work with Representative Bolton. But I have a few things that I'd like to share with you. I don't want to take too much of your time tonight, but listening to the presentation on the audit, it brings me back to the 12 years that I sat on the Lebanon City Council, so I've been in your seat. I had to really appreciate the way that you've guided the process and worked with your team and done the job. That was a great report. So it's, again, I've got a background in working at the local level as a city councilor, a mayor, and assistant mayor, and bring that to my my work at the Senate. I came to you, I'd been in the Senator for 2 years for District 5, and then you were redistricted and moved into District 5. So for me, it was like a little bit of a homecoming. My background, besides serving locally, is that I'm a paramedic by trade. And I worked at Spear Memorial in the Emergency Department for 10 years and would ride with your fire department regularly in responding to emergencies in your community. So a number of members of the medical community here I've known well, and it's nice to be back home. So I just wanted to share that with you as well, that you're not complete strangers to me. I wanted to just talk a little bit about some of the things. You may have interest, primarily the questions for me, but I thought that this would be a great way just to make the introduction. Please know that your town manager has reached out to me as well as I have reached out to him on occasion. I do interact and work with Representative Bolton and the others from your delegation, but I thought it would be nice if you got the opportunity to meet me, and that if there's something that you ever need, you can just go ahead and call. So I'll give you my business cards, but my cell phone number is on the website, easy to find. Some of the things I think that are important, and when we're looking at this year, we've just moved out of a budget year, and Representative Bolton may have briefed you on this, but our $15.9 billion state budget actually passed both the House and the Senate, and this and was signed into law. And this is the first time in a number of years that we saw that happening, and was really focused on a working families type of budget, and I believe was responsive to some of the things that I hear from, not only from the previous District 5, but the combination of District 5 that has to do with housing, that has to do with child care, that has to do with workforce, which ties into housing and child care. And then there's the downshifting from the state to the municipal government, and some of the ways that we've worked to offset that. And again, based on my background, I'm super sensitive to it. The first year that I was on the city council, or actually was going into the second year, was when the change in the retirement system was made. And the state stopped contributing, and we were handed a bill for $386,000 that we had not budgeted for, and had to pay that, as well as pay a larger share up until last year, where the state made a 7.5% state contribution just for 1 year. I'd like to see that be permanent, like the state was able to, through not in a budget year, but outside of that budget year, bring some money to offset some of the costs for the locals, but I still don't think that that's enough. So I'm sensitive to that on, not just on your behalf, but for the entire district. So from a housing perspective, you may have heard about the Housing Champions Program. I think it doesn't matter what community you go to, you hear that there is a need for housing, for affordable and workforce housing. So the Housing Champions Program is one way to bring, the Housing Champions Program is to bring some money to support infrastructure and partnerships between the state and local government by saying, if you enter into the Housing Champions Program, which is voluntary, your planning board and your zoning board will be required to do the same type of training. So we are supporting training, standardized training for zoning and planning boards, and from there, you could apply to the Housing Champions Program to bring funding in predominantly for the infrastructure costs, where we all know that's a big piece of it. So this law passed, there was funding that was set aside in the budget. There was also more funding that went in the budget to the Affordable Housing Fund. Right now, the Housing Champions rules have been prepared, and they're gonna go before the Joint Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules. So they're not completely done, but this is a strong step forward in building partnerships, in bringing funding for infrastructure, which is so costly. And we hear time and time again, now I live in a city that's not much bigger than this, it's just called a city, but we are constantly under duress for where our workforce is going to live. So this is a positive step, not just for us, but for communities throughout the state. And my time in the State House has been limited, but it is one of the times where I saw the Business Industry Association and the legislature strongly come together, because they know if we don't find a way to provide affordable housing, we're just going to continue to push our workforce out. And more concerning, equally as concerning, is on top of that comes home ownership and the concerns about what it costs to own a home. It's, I have a little 2-bedroom ranch, and it's shocking to me what it's valued at now. Now it would be to my benefit if we sold it. We have no intention of doing that. But who can't live here? We're basically pricing out our children and our grandchildren. My daughter's 26, and she actually used to come over here with me when I would teach. I actually taught the first advanced level EMT course right over there in the one of the college buildings that has the pumpkins on the top. I'm still trying to figure out how you get them there. But I used to bring her and put her in her playpen while I taught these courses. She couldn't afford. She's coming back to New Hampshire from the south. She couldn't afford, even with a decent job, to afford a home or even a condominium right now. So we have multiple fronts that we need to deal with. Workforce housing, we need to find a way to make homes more affordable. And then there's always, not always, but there is the homelessness situation, which every community have unhoused folks that are there, that we're working to identify. I know communities are working to identify them and try to find different ways to shelter them. I know as a municipality, you are you're the spot or the point of last resort. I remember that in Lebanon as well. So I wanted to bring up housing. Childcare, it may feel sometimes distant, but it impacts your workforce, the residents in your community that are working either in your community or outside, as well as those that are coming in. This was another area that, constituents statewide and throughout District 5, we heard from them. So we're able to change basically the Children's Scholarship Program for Child Care Scholarship Program has been changed from an attendance-based to an enrollment-based process. So what would happen before is that if you had so many absences, you could lose your spot. And having been a working mother, if I had lost my childcare spot, it would have been hard for me to keep the job that I was in. And for a portion of that, I was a single mom. So that's a struggle. Going to enrollment-based is a protection for the parents and for the children. And we're able to move some of the federal funds that were out there, COVID funds that came in for different points of relief, to help beef that up so it was more widely available. I did introduce, and it unfortunately didn't make it through, a local option or enabling piece of legislation that would have allowed communities like Plymouth, would have allowed Lebanon or anyone else who wanted to actually provide an exemption for daycare centers to help offset some of their costs so they could maybe pay staff more to build out their capacity to make that available to them. It was not, it's basically still sitting in a House committee. It's been seen as having some merit, and this is actually the Upper Valley Business Alliance that brought that together, but we haven't been able to get it over the finish line. What I like about enabling legislation, whether it's this or it's talking about an infrastructure fund for public safety with, a $2 fee, say, on a hotel room stay per night. However these are constructed, it leaves it to folks like yourself who actually understand your community best, rather than a legislator who's from, again, I feel like I'm home, but I'm still learning more about how you do your business in Plymouth, and I think it's better that we leave some of these choices to you. Unfortunately, that's not always the most popular position, but sometimes it works. So I want to just keep that out there. One of the things I think in talking about downshifting, and I want to move in to take the next piece of the workforce, because I heard your accountant talk about ambulance billing. So being my background as a paramedic, I'm working a lot in the area of what are we doing about the downshifting of costs because of inadequate Medicaid reimbursement, as well as the in and out of network struggles with commercial payers. So this year, we were able to work on, and we were able to raise $134 million for the state Medicaid plan to amend it to increase the rate. So that's matched federally. So we have 134 in state dollars. There's a federal match that comes to it, and it was targeted for the workforce. So the hospital sat this one out and said, help us pay our people more so we can bring more people to work. What this means for you for emergency medical services, and I have spoken with Chief Morrison, and I know that you have a group that does your billing for you, is that we now see that the Medicaid reimbursement rates are at 100% of Medicare. So that is the first time, in 17 years. Last year, we were able to get it to 15%, so now we're into 18 years, we're at 100%, first time in our history. So if the Medicare rate goes up, so does the Medicaid rate. So if you may have seen $3 or $4 before per mile on transportation, you're going to be looking at over $10 a mile on transportation. The city that I live in went and looked at that and said, it's in Lebanon, said, this could mean, based on what what we were billing for Medicaid and what we were receiving, this could be close to $100,000 that was not available to us before. So it's targeted at workforce, but it brings reimbursement through the pipeline and will help some of that cost shifting. The other piece related to this that I hear a lot from communities about is if you're not a participating provider, someone who takes a ride in your ambulance, and I know you serve not just Plymouth, some of the surrounding communities, then if they're with one of the commercial payers, the check that gets cut for reimbursement often gets cut to the patient, not to the provider. So your fire department is not able, without going through the patient, and we want to take patients out of the middle, okay? They have to go to the patient to get that, and respectfully, sometimes that money is spent because there isn't a clear understanding or somebody has a greater need. I was at a dinner Friday night and was talking to the Littleton, New Hampshire fire chief, who said they have $75,000 in fees that have been paid to patients rather than providers. So if you're not in network, this is a problem for you. So I have a bill, there's a bill in the House this year and a bill in the Senate to address this. This has happened before, and actually former Representative Weston actually worked on this too. We're taking a different approach and looking at all of the, the balanced billing provisions and the in and out of network. But I'm really confident, and I'm going to work really hard to solve this problem, just like I did working with the members, other members of the Senate and the House in dealing with raising the Medicaid reimbursement rates. That will be to your benefit, because right now you cover those costs because they're not being covered by commercial payers, and they're not being covered by the Medicaid plan. The last thing I'll say is that I'm working on, I submitted a bill this year, which will be a pathway to a larger project, but what it will do is create a code in the Medicaid plan that we already have in Medicare, and we have with the commercial payers, that if your ambulance goes to somebody's home and cares for them, it's a 911 response and they care for them, but they don't transport them because that person refuses transport at that point, or they unfortunately have an untimely death, you'll be able to actually bill for that, treat and no transport. We're going to be starting small because that's what's available, but this is the platform by which we can start to work on a more robust mobile integrated or community paramedicine program. I hear from communities around here, like Hebron in particular, they see a lot of treat and no transport, and their payer mix is very heavily governmental, Medicare and Medicaid, so it's really making it difficult for them to operate their ambulance service. So there's a whole host of other legislative matters that I'm happy to talk about, but I thought I would come in and just share with you some of the key areas that I hear about from our constituency, that I feel pretty good that we were able to bring some of those to resolution this year, but I think when it comes to the retirement system, we have rooms and meals tax, the revenue sharing on that's been reinstated. We have to keep that rolling forward. We need to continue to make a decent state contribution to the retirement system. There's certainly much more to talk about. $20 million in roads and bridges, 10 in 2024, 10 in 2025. So if you have projects that are in the pipeline through the 10-year highway safety plan or the 10-year highway plan, you may be able to see that money move up for you. And I'll say this as I end my comments, it was really exciting to see a police officer be sworn in here tonight and hear you're fully staffed. Because that's not the norm. And it really says a lot about your community. In all my years in this line of, being in public safety, I've never seen help wanted signs out in front of fire stations, police stations, and schools. Okay, and it's like an everyday occurrence. And by the way, small world that it is, Rachel Collins' husband's parents used to provide daycare for Phoebe, and I knew her husband when he was my daughter Phoebe, when he was a little boy. I texted Gary Collins, I said, I think I just saw your daughter-in-law get sworn in. So it's a very small world. I appreciate your time and the opportunity to speak to you, and I'm happy to answer questions. If I don't have the answer, I will certainly find it for you. Do my best.
Thank you. First, really appreciate the work you're doing around Medicare reimbursement. That makes a huge difference to us where we have struggled to get the money back for the costs that we spend running our ambulance service. So that makes a huge deal to our community.
Definitely appreciate the work on that because we see a loss every year. And we've had to reevaluate how we develop our ambulance budget and how we enter into contracts to make the cost fair and have it shared. So, and to make it sustainable for us to be able to continue that service. So anything you can do with the federal programs, but also with the commercial market as well, and their repricing that they do.
So, just so you know, the new Medicaid rates, we're going to go into effect January 1st, but Councilor Warmington and I, knowing the situation that EMS is in statewide, we kind of like as bookends, worked with the Commissioner of Health and Human Services. So as of October 1st, those rates are available to you. Your biller knows about that, and if anything was billed without, knowing that was available, in the early days of this, and Jeff Spencer's very good at what he does, he can actually go back and collect that. The second piece is I was actually appointed to the federal rule writing, or not even rule writing, the federal board at CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and we just finished our last set of public hearings on the No Surprises Act for the prohibition of balance billing, so we can find a way to continue to take the patients out of the middle, but to bring the reimbursement that you need, which involves having the commercial payers at the table. So we made the final report isn't out, but we made our findings and our recommendations to Congress and all our votes on that 2 weeks ago. A similar parallel effort is happening with the Department of Insurance in New Hampshire. So I'm on that team that is working on the same type of project. So we'll have at least 2 years before we'll see the federal NSA include ambulances, because it doesn't right now, and hopefully embrace some of those recommendations. But that's the same kind of work that we can implement here in bringing our partners from the commercial payers, who we're working very closely with, to the table so that it is fair and it is adequate, and you're not having to eat any of that portion that should be covered, like what's going to a patient that should come directly to you.
You didn't say too much on education.
What would you like me to say about education, Bill Bolton?
I was just wondering how we're going to fully fund education and make certain that, well, I'm thinking also about SWEP and how SWEP is going to be collected and sent to the state for reimbursement for town needs. I mean, there's several, maybe like 12 towns that are able to reintegrate their SWEP because they don't need to, expend their monies.
I'm sorry, Bill, what's SWEP?
It's the statewide education property tax, locally raised and locally spent, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I spoke for you, sorry. It's my habit. I'm a little bit of a, when
And we're also waiting for, a lawsuit to come, be ruled on regarding adequacy. And,
Steve Rand.
yeah.
Yep.
So I kind of pointed down that way.
No, that's okay. So, excellent question. Here's the thing. Probably, 60% of your budget is education? Is it? 62% was in Lebanon. So you're probably, everyone's pretty close to that statewide. And one of the ways, so there's, it's double-edged. First of all, we have two Claremont lawsuits that we still haven't really, we haven't answered the call of those lawsuits, which is to adequately and fairly fund education in the state. And now we have Conval, and then we have the Rand, I think it's the Rand-Volinsky case. So there's the funding side of this, which is significant because it's a regressive system. I think you should probably already know, you have a certain amount that comes to you from the state, and then with the adequacy grants, $4,800, $5,000, and then there's a little more added on top of that depending on if there's special education, free and reduced meals, and then you use the SWEPT funds to fill that difference, okay? And sometimes it even goes beyond that because you're using your local property taxes to actually fill between what the state gives you and what it costs you to educate per student. So there's no easy answer, and I see as we're struggling through, say, things like school choice and education freedom accounts and seeing the significant potential for money to leave the system, what strikes me is that we've never really solved the problem. So I don't have a particular answer to that. I know that it is it's an ideological, there are differences of opinion, but I think in fairness to everyone, while all of this is like, how are we going to do things differently, we should actually do what the Supreme Court has asked us to do. And then children wouldn't have differences based per zip code on what's available to them. So in serving towns like Lebanon and Hanover, say they have multiple languages. This doesn't make one community better than another, and that's not what I'm trying to say, but they will have multiple languages that they can actually study, but in another community within this very same district, they might only have one that's available to them because that's all that they can afford. And because of the weight on the property tax piece. So that's, I am on Senate Education. We spend more time, we do talk about funding, but we tend to spend more time talking about competency-based education, talking about basically, unfortunately, discussions about what school boards what their authority should and should not be. And again, I think the school boards know, like I think you all know best, what happens locally. Talking about charter schools, talking about the real estate related to, if you had a group of schools like we did in Lebanon and we merged them all together, and then we had 3 school buildings, and we worked with the city and the school board worked to sell those buildings, and they're now mixed-use properties. So we have housing in them, we have dental offices in them, we even have a Montessori school in them. But in the last 3 years, we've taken steps backwards. This is just in my thinking, is that we've taken that authority away from really you and your school boards, because now it has to go to the charter schools first. I'm not opposed to public charter schools, but I actually think you can figure out where you want to spend that money, that we shouldn't decide who goes to the front of the line. So we spend a lot of time talking about that. There was big work done 3 years ago and a commission that had $500,000 price tag that told New Hampshire exactly what it needed to do to fund education, and that was just struck down. In fact, we disbanded, not that I was in favor, we disbanded that commission rather than trying to put more of an effort into it. So there's wide disagreement, and it's very unfair. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that all elementary and high school focused, or is there any focus on higher education in those conversations as well?
So primarily when we're talking about this, it's elementary and high school focus. But you bring up a really good point. Have any of you been following the discussion about the declining enrollment in higher education in New Hampshire? I mean, right here
I mean,
is
it obviously affects this community pretty directly.
significantly. So I was talking, do you know Representative Rick Ladd, who's from the Haverhill area, and he's the chair of House Education, I believe, and I've known him for a long time. I used to live up in Woodsville. He was talking to me last week, 2 weeks ago, and it's public. The governor has put together an initiative to very succinctly and rapidly, figure out how to do this, how to basically improve the situation that we're currently in. Now, with higher education and the lack of enrollment, one of the things that Representative Ladd talked about is that we have community colleges, then we have the more traditional universities, the traditional state universities, the state colleges, and that all of these programs, I shouldn't say all of them, say out of 5 of them, 3 of them have nursing programs. Should maybe 1 or 2 versus 3? I mean, are there different ways for the makeup of these resources to be spread around the state, which would cost the system less? That's not the only thing that's a problem, but if we could bring the cost down to the system, maybe we could use some of that money to actually lower in-state tuition than have it raised. And if you're
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been talking for 15 years, 20 years about reducing the costs of all of these universities, but the state hasn't stepped up and funded them.
No.
I mean, we're 50 out of 50. Like,
If you doubled what we spend,
we'd still be 50 out of 50. I mean, we can talk about reducing the cost of education, but if the state doesn't step up and increase the funding side, well, all you're doing is a race to the bottom. All you're doing is trying to zero your higher education in this state. I have a kid who's a senior in high school. We're doing all the pricing games, and I'll tell you, in-state education for him is not a cost reduction. I can send him to the University of Southern Maine. It's going to be cheaper than UNH. I can send him to a school in Massachusetts, a school in Vermont, a school in Rhode Island. All of these are going to be cheaper schools than our in-state higher education. We can talk about cost reduction, but that's not a winning path, right? Like, having a higher education, I mean, it hurts our community too. As the state doesn't fund Plymouth State's not willing to then give money to our community. They've reduced the amount of money they give to our community, and they say, well, the state doesn't give us any money. How could we possibly give you any money? And how can we look them in the eyes and say, yeah, but our ambulance costs went up, our road costs went up, our sidewalk costs went up. We have to buy a new ladder truck to service your buildings, right? Like all of these we're negotiating contracts with them, and they're doing the best that they can do, but the best that they can do is less. And that's because they don't have any funding. So then what's their answer? Increase tuition? Well, no, the state's told them not to increase tuition. So they can neither increase tuition, nor do they get more revenue from the state. And what the state says is, could you just reduce costs? Well, that's insane. And that's insane to do for 20 years. It may be one thing to do for 1 year, right? Anybody can take a haircut for 1 year. But it's been 20 years.
I don't disagree with you. It's all about investments, and
We're essentially driving students out of the state, and they're the ones that we want to stay here and work in the state.
It goes back to the
And play in the
workforce
state,
issue. It
yeah.
goes back, all that stuff.
Do you know what the discount rate at the university system is? It's in the mid to high 30%, which means, yeah, there's a sticker price of, I don't know what they actually are, because my kids are past this, but let's just say it's $15,000. Well, if you're giving, on the average, 35% back to a student to get them to come here, well, why is the tuition $15,000? Why not just make it what it really is and save all the administrative overhead? But the state isn't incentivizing the university system to be able to do that. The Board of Trustees controls the tuition rates. I think it's high time that the state steps in and does something more proactive. That's my piece.
I don't disagree. It's all about investment, and we run on the margin and are always looking for ways to cut costs and to cut taxes. But with that comes a cost. So you can say, look at all of these different fees and taxes that have been cut. Come live here or come run your business here. But at the same time, there is a cost to the operation, and our university system, our state college system, our community college system is a state system. So it is one of many that are hurt by this. So I completely understand. It is getting everyone to lean in and be on the same page. So I can't say, I hear you, and I'll take that back. I wish I had an answer for it tonight.
No,
I don't.
I didn't expect you to have the magic bullet to the biggest problem our community has faced in 2 decades.
We just
That would
want
be
to make
asking a
sure
lot,
that
Sue.
we just want to make sure the message isn't going to be, yeah, we should just close the university system because we're not going to pay for it.
And honestly, I mean, I think about the idea of consolidating programs, and Plymouth, some of the best growth we've had was opening a nursing program here.
It's true.
Right? And it's like, well, maybe we shouldn't have one. We just keep that at UNH. Keep all the best programs at UNH. Well, that's no good.
But then they're only going to have so many students at UNH. They've defined how large they want their program to be. Same thing goes for Keene. If you're having the schools define how large their program is, means, okay, now that's all the students that they can take. And you could go with the idea, oh, we're just going to centralize it and make it 3 times as big. Well, all of these nurses that are in nursing programs, they have to be placed at hospitals. And if you have them all at UNH, there's only so many hospitals around there, so you can't do that either. It's just...
Then how do we get nurses here? How do we get teachers into this community? How do we get small businesses? It's Plymouth State having a strong business program that helps small business to grow in our region. It's Plymouth State having a teaching program that helps to educate the teachers in this state. It's Plymouth State having a nursing program that puts nurses in our hospitals, and I don't know.
This is just the beginning. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I just know that is what some of the discussions will be, because that was, Representative Ladd and I had that conversation, and the acknowledgement is that the enrollment is on the decline and the system is not working. So, at a certain point, the recommendations will come to the legislature. The question is going to be, are the people who are raising their hands willing to make those investments?
Right.
And that's what that's what you advocate for, and that's what you want to be paying attention to.
Fun topic.
What about? No,
It is a fun topic.
It is.
No, it is,
It's
yeah.
it's
I tend to be very healthcare focused, but I do spend time. I mean, I am on Senate Education. I think
With us in your district, I deeply appreciate the work you're doing in medical, but if you can just keep your ear to the ground when it comes to the things about higher education, this particular community is, boy, we have a symbiotic relationship.
Right
It's right here. It's a big chunk of our town, a big chunk of our downtown, and if PSU was suddenly to close or to recede more than it has already receded, it's going to produce a real.
Every time the enrollment drops, it's an impact on local downtown businesses.
Yeah.
Because
And the
there's
region,
fewer
right? We're a central hub region. We have the grocery stores, we have the stores, we have the commerce, and we draw a big area here. But if a big chunk of our core falls out, then we won't be able to serve, we won't be able to sustain those businesses here, and then the surrounding communities will struggle to find those businesses as well. It's a huge regional impact.
Yeah.
Keene State has dropped sub 2,000 full-time undergrads.
Yeah, that's where 2,500, but so,
And which is a devastation to that community as well.
Yeah.
Luckily, the Keene community is larger.
Yeah, they
and
have
that
that.
city can maybe sustain and account for and correct. Not that I would ever endorse closing Keene State.
But you know,
have
you have, you know,
plenty of
Plymouth
alumni
State
in my
that's
family
dropped
from there,
below 3,300. They were at one point over 4,500 full-time undergraduates. So this trend is continuing, and we're also at the same time driving our students to go out of state because, quite frankly, it's too expensive to go here. My daughter went to Colby Sawyer for about the same price as UNH.
And that was, and you had discounted
And
tuition.
that's with the discount.
You
Yeah.
had discounted tuition as an employee.
My daughter went to St. Michael's College, close to the same.
Yeah,
Maybe a
so
little more, but
something has to change somewhere.
Right. When the mission of state education should be to provide a quality education to the citizens of the state, and it
And that's a
suddenly
key
can't,
thing,
it's
the
a problem.
citizens of.
That's a problem.
We fund institutions, we don't fund students.
Yeah.
And that's what I would love to see as a change. Right now, we are funding individual campuses. Those campuses should be incentivized to attract in-state students. But right now, they're incentivized to attract out-of-state students. Why? Because there's more revenue there. We're not doing service to our primary constituency.
you're correct.
Any other questions for
Thank you for
Senator
coming.
Prentice?
Thank you for having me. You know where to find me.
Appreciate
I'll
you.
leave some
Thank you.
business cards with you, and stay in touch.
Thank you so
Be
much.
happy to come back.
I'd like to say too, that a lot of communities were upset by redistricting because they pretty much, had a very bad impact on communities, but in our case, we got Senator Prentice, so.
I think it was thank you, Bill, because I felt like it was a huge bonus to be able to come over to Plymouth. It's just like, when you hear the song from Cheers and that bell rings, I was like, I was just like coming back home. So, all right. And my cell phone is on there, and I'm happy to talk to you anytime. All right. See you soon. Thank you so much.
See you soon.
Take care.
All right. All right. 2024 town holidays and select board meetings.
Yep, so in front of you, you have the tentative schedule for the holidays of 2024. And the second page is the meeting schedule for the board for the calendar year.
Did we not celebrate Juneteenth 19?
We do not.
It was discussed during union negotiations, which is probably where it is
Gotcha.
in there.
See nothing that jumps out, it scares me.
No additional holidays added.
And I assume this aligns with the union contract.
Yes. Yep.
Do you need this approved? Are you good?
Nope, just,
We're good. It was an awareness thing entirely. Perfect. And then select board meetings similarly. We have 3 elections next year.
We do.
you do.
It might be worth noting those on this as well, since we have obligation. Because town elections are here, just not the 2 nationals. Thank you. All right, Neil, safety concern on Langdon Street and surrounding intersections.
Did you skip Highland Street discussion?
Which one?
The Highland Street?
Oh, I did, but that was intentionally.
Okay,
They couldn't be here tonight.
gotcha, thank you.
I have concerns about an intersection on Langdon Street, which is, in my opinion, it's unsafe. And the increased amount of traffic is ultimately going to result in a tragedy, in my opinion.
Which intersection, yeah?
It's just below the Mayhew Funeral Home. You have, it's a four-way intersection. You have Prince Haven Apartments, which comes in from the west side, and you have Fox Park Apartments, which comes in from the east side. And you have a 45-degree angle. It's basically a blind corner. You can't see around the corner either way you're coming. And the worst part of it is the ingress and egress from Fox Park Apartments has a zero sight line. You cannot see up Langdon Street to the north at all. And the traffic pattern, there are times when it's light, and there are times when it's very heavy, and there are times when people travel very fast around that corner. Mm-hmm. And I would like to see the sight line improved. Fox Park Apartments has a brick wall with
The retaining wall holds
with vegetation on it.
You're talking about the
And-
vegetation on top, because right now that retaining wall kind of holds that 13 Langdon piece of property.
I think we should encourage them to cut it down so that people can actually see the road when they pull out.
Do you think it's still? I used to live at 13 Langdon. I owned that house for a long time, and you're right. That's a terrifying area. I had to back out of that driveway every day because
I
there
would
was no
say
space to turn around.
predominantly the traffic is responsible.
Mm-hmm.
Many people are careful, and there are enough people who aren't, who are exceeding
I was just thinking though that
practical
wall's,
speed.
isn't that wall too high? Even with the vegetation
high.
gone, you probably can't see over it if you're
The
pulling
wall
out
itself
there, right?
blocks the view,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
and the vegetation on top.
That just makes it worse. But
I think we should encourage Fox Park Apartments to do something about that visual blockage before somebody gets T-boned coming out of there.
I guess I would ask Alex,
I-
do you have any
I-
statistics, Alex, on that area? Because I think it's important that we first do our due diligence in investigating what has occurred in that area over the last 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, we looked for, over the last 20 years, there were 2 minor traffic accidents in the area, and no injuries. But, I mean, yeah, it is a concern. There's also a crosswalk there, too, that's diagonal. But the line of sight is an issue.
as a very short, just research type,
I'd like to see some signage.
could we take the speed sign we have on Merrill that has been there a long time, and I think we reviewed the data and said nobody's really speeding through there really anyway.
Yeah.
Could we move that speed
course we
sign
can.
from Merrill over near that intersection and just collect a little bit of data there to see?
Which direction do you know, or do you want to
Well, I
do it
think
both
the worst
sides?
part is coming down from the north.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely move it.
People do come very fast up the hill. There's been a lot of construction of new homes, and there's a lot more people taking their kids to school or whatever, and maybe late for work. And there are a lot of vehicles that are traveling very fast around that corner.
Well, I know I use that road more right now with the downtown
I was just going to
project
say,
too.
Yeah, I
I'll have a
think-
detour
definitely-
I
through
think
that area.
that's probably an issue too. I'd like to see at least a warning sign, a caution sign, maybe a speed limit sign on that. But also, I think we should approach the owners of Fox Park and ask them if they could cooperate.
Yeah, the
I would
sign, the
tend to try to
signage
get some more
would be,
research before we
Some more data
Before
before
we-
we make any decision.
got in the kind of faces of the property owners, but I
I'm
Yeah,
sa-
we'll move the
I'm
radar sign.
satisfied. I'm satisfied.
Does Highway move that for you, Alex, or?
No, we move it.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, John, please.
As someone who lives in that neighborhood right there, when you mentioned that, Neil, my first thought was the crosswalk. That crosswalk, even when people are going the speed limit, is kind of terrifying. I've crossed it many times. There are lots of kids crossing there because they want to go to Fox Park and play, and the playground, the pond there, and everything else, and the trails. And you just really can't see from that crosswalk what's coming up the hill. And like I said, even at speed limit, it's really a little bit daunting to cross that crosswalk. And I mean, I don't know if that requires moving it or something, but it does not feel like a safe crosswalk. Well, cars aside from the whole thing of, you know, them hitting one another.
Yeah, admittedly, the crosswalk would be better if it was moved more in the direction of Highland Street, you know, away from the steep corner spot.
But then the people
Again,
coming up the hill
I had
can't
a
see
2-year-old when I
around.
lived there, and I used to cross that crosswalk all the time. It was not great.
Either way you look at it, it's a blind corner.
It is, yeah, yeah. I'm just thinking if you moved it a little bit, then you'd get it away from the corner. But I think we get some data, and if we find,
Oh.
to your point, even if most cars are coming through there at 30, because I assume that's the
It's
speed
pretty
limit.
fast, actually.
30 is pretty fast for that residential neighborhood.
But I think you're right. Let's get some data. Let's do some observation. John, your comments. Neil, your comments. And come up with a plan after we've
Yeah.
gathered some information.
Do we ever place a police officer, anybody in that like Mayhew parking lot to watch for speed up or down that hill?
Not of recent, but it's something we can monitor, absolutely.
Might be
Maybe
worth
from down
just
in-
getting a couple observational.
Down at Fox Park, the parking lot in front of where
I'll
the
drive by.
ice skating.
Yeah, either at the bottom down
Yeah.
at Fox Park or in the Mayhew Funeral Home parking lot, or, you know,
Yep.
one or the other.
I really like at the bottom at the Fox Park because
Nobody can see you.
no one can see you.
Well, yeah, nobody's, but coming up the hill, you wouldn't, if you were in the Mayhew parking lot and you
Yeah.
came up that hill, you wouldn't see them until they were
It's too late.
come around that corner, and they would be like, uh-oh. If the issue's up, like you suggested.
Wow,
Or
both,
down.
both. Yeah, it's a blind
We
corner.
could do both.
Yeah, just, again, observation,
You
getting a
got so
couple.
many things going on
anecdotal.
at that corner.
Good call out.
Would mirrors be of help too? We stick a mirror down
On the other side.
They'd probably get rocks.
All right,
don't know.
never mind then.
That's something to consider.
All right, we've held on long enough. Let's talk to the rec department. Kelsey, you missed all the nice things we were saying about you earlier.
You can watch them on video.
We got some goodies for you guys.
Swag.
Swag, as they call it. I've been educated on the rebranding and the
Considered bribes?
Any of it edible?
Swag. Different.
See everybody.
We wanted to introduce Sierra as our new addition to the family, the rec family.
Hi.
Hello?
New addition.
Thank you.
Some folders.
I can pass them down.
Successful. So we were approached by CG Studios a year ago, I think at this stage of the game. February-ish. And she wanted to offer her services to us. And we were quick to say we didn't have any funding for it. And she said, that's okay. Don't worry about it right now, and we'll talk. So then we went on this journey with her, which we can go through the slides really quickly. So the challenge is that we were somewhat all over the page with
our advertising, our staff shirts, and our promotional materials without a defined logo. And the goal was to build recognition and awareness through consistent logos so that the community would recognize us real easily and say, oh, I can just focus on the information. I see the logo, I know it's them. So we started talking about what that would look like. We were given options, and unbeknownst to us, we actually chose their most favorite, her and her work associates' most favorite, which is the next slide. It looks like this one, kind of like where the mountains meet, the river flows through.
Lisa, I'm
Yes.
sorry, I'm going to ask you to speak into the mic or pull it closer to you.
Great.
Because I can barely hear you here.
Okay, sounds good. So that's what we came up with, this particular logo, and then the last slide was the result of just some ideas and what that would look like. And so we started to, and that's in your folders that you have, started to consistently push all that through our advertising and through our, emails and flyers. And we, and in the middle of this process, Danielle, we had sort of said to her, why were you doing this? And she said that the department played such a huge impact in her family and children's role. She wanted to give back to us. The pro bono work was valued at around $20,000, and she donated all that to us. So it was quite an experience, and it was interesting because, your board, this board, supported us in the rebranding and, well, the restructuring initially, and then with the rebranding, it was kind of like we all went on a journey of really looking and dissecting the department, realizing things like our soccer Saturday morning program was 90% non-residents, which was a huge problem, because for every non-resident you're serving, you're not serving a resident. So we got real thoughtful on the way we were offering programs, what was important, what wasn't important, and we just decided that we really needed to look at what Plymouth residents wanted. And through that process as well, we met with the SAU recreation departments, and we talked about, Holderness, your people are coming to us for this soccer program. Can you think about running this? Would you consider running this? And other departments as well. And so we're all working together to try to figure out how we can coexist and offer each other resources and not be repetitive, but then at the same time look at each community and what does each community want and commit to that community. Because at the end of the day, that's the funding we receive is Plymouth. So sometimes we receive phone calls from non-residents who are really upset that we can't meet their needs, and then we'll say that our focus is Plymouth and we're trying to meet those needs, and what town are you from, and maybe you could make something happen in that town. So it was great to go through the process, and even though we separated with the Parks Department, our partnership is kind of that with the school. It's very cohesive and it works well. We work well together, but at the same time you're able to separate and really see, okay, this is what the parks is spending, this is what the school's reimbursing, this is what the recreation, this is their revenues, this is who they're serving. So it was a great experience. It was almost like receiving, I said to the gang at the office, I felt like I received a marketing degree, because I kind of know now the do's and don'ts. And she was really patient with us, and spent a lot of time with us and educated us in a lot of ways. And some things were hard to take, because it was what we were used to. But at the end of the day, it really became a great last couple of years, and we're in a good place where we feel very focused on what needs to be done and what we need to be doing.
Danielle is excellent. I work with her on a pro bono project as well during COVID, and then I personally have used her, and you're right, I learned a lot of marketing things. So it's certainly not unlike her to reach out and do this kind of work.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that.
And kind of cool, she went to PSU.
Yes.
And so bringing it back to the community and as a business owner supporting a town department. So that was, yeah, it was great. Very, very thankful to her for the journey. But yeah, and we have some LL Bean vests for you all to look through and see, find a size. Small and mediums are in back order, but that's okay because they were tiny. So I'm gonna recommend their size very small, so we can pass those out. Yes, please feel free to wear them in the community. We're trying to get, she said, try to get as much of your products out, and try to circulate that. We did with soccer and that, we did with summer program and basketball, and yeah, we're trying to push it through. Yeah.
When you have other communities, in this case, the soccer program, what did you say, 90%? So do you find yourself turning away Plymouth residents, or do you
It's tricky.
wait and then reach out to other communities?
It's tricky, yeah. We talk about this. At times, we just say to the non-residents, we can't service you right now, and we give Plymouth residents as long as they may need, and we try to reach out, and we try to call, and we try to email and text, and we have a Remind app. We try to promote that with the groups that we have on the Remind app as much as possible, but it's tricky. And it's hard. I mean, that 90% number grew over the years. That was not the case for a long time.
It's also tricky with the regional schools,
Right.
right? Because you've got, you're in 3rd grade and your friend is participating in a weekend rec program, but you're not from Plymouth, and it's like, but I want to do this thing with my friend on the weekend. So it's tricky.
And we've gotten great feedback from the high school. I mean, kids have gone as freshmen into the high school, and they've really been nervous about the first day, and they've said, oh yeah, I did park and rec programs with all these kids programs, so
Right,
I knew
right.
everybody the first day of school.
Yeah,
And
it
that
helps to
we
bring
don't
them back
take-
together in high
Yeah,
school.
That's an
Absolutely.
amazing thing to have that impact. Or you're standing at soccer and you realize 8 families from 4 different communities are having a barbecue on Sunday. I mean, that's huge, but at the same time, we're trying to be so fiscally responsible with the money we receive and what can we, and all of those conversations that are sometimes, challenging. We know it's the right thing to do, but we're not servicing a resident when we're servicing a non-resident.
And we generally do have registration deadlines for residents to start first and then non-residents after, if the space allows.
And people don't understand, like, they'll say to us, well, I shop in Plymouth. We'll say, yeah, that's not.
You don't really have many other options.
Right. So, we want to thank you guys too for the support of the restructuring. That really what got us on this whole journey, and then ending up with the rebranding. I'd say that, it was money well spent that we didn't spend. So,
It really does look great.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You even have stickers for your laptop.
I do, yeah. Yeah, we have,
nice.
we would like one as well.
Boy.
Nice.
I don't know.
I know, sorry to be personal, but we have large,
On video.
I'll take an extra large.
extra large, okay.
I'll take an extra large as
Extra
well.
large, okay, great.
I'm also a big person.
Extra large?
I hope Samantha doesn't steal mine, so we're a little upset.
Well, thanks.
If I went with large, Xander would have stolen it.
Here you go.
I don't know, probably extra large.
Nice. What
Get a
size is
sticker too?
So are these like,
Your clothes.
are these gifts like more than $25? Do we have to declare it, or?
They're under. Just assume they're under.
Yeah, I get that group rate going.
With that in mind,
LLB.
where are we at? Oh, plowing and sanding. Thank you, thank you, Rec.
That's right, Rex.
Rec.
So with regards to the plowing of Boulder Point Road and Main Street for winter services, You have 2 purchase orders in front of you for that. With regards to the plowing and sanding, we only received 1 response back to the RFP that was sent out. It was from RM Piper, and Joe estimates 168 hours, $95 an hour for the plowing, and for the winter snow hauling, 72 hours at an estimate of $125 an hour. These are the same rates that RM Piper submitted to us last year, so there was no increase in cost, just to get these 2 purchase orders signed to get these both in place.
What happens if we go over the estimated hours?
We haven't
Same.
so far.
Okay, but if we were, same $95 an hour or $125 an hour, that type of thing, or?
I think Joe, over the years, has estimated what we've used between Boulder Point and the hauling,
Okay.
and I think he's budgeted appropriate to cover those costs.
Boulder Point is kind of a dangerous road.
We do Boulder Point more often than we do any other road because of the medical facilities at the end and the veterans home. But we still haven't gone over budget in those lines.
And if we did, you could just sign the extra cost. Because
Right, we
it's
can sign
under
extra costs. It's a
10,000.
bottom line budget anyway, so we can pull from anywhere else in the budget that there's monies left over.
Okay.
Dump truck rate is fair.
Yeah. And that's a tri-axle, so.
That's fair.
And then on the winter sand, you want to do that one first?
Yeah, both, why don't we take both of those one at a time here?
I'll make a motion to accept the proposal from RM Piper Inc. for plowing and sanding services in the sum of $16,000 for
Second.
Boulder Point.
Second hand. Second.
And that is an up to 16,000.
Up to.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And then the second one, another proposal from RM Piper Inc. for winter snow sand hauling services for up to $9,000.
Second.
Any discussion?
Dick retired, and his daughter's running the company.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
But I don't see any difference in their service.
That's great.
You know, they're steady.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Now we've got sand.
So with regards to the winter sand, again, Joe put out an RFP for winter sand. Screen dry winter sand is what he had required. He received 2 proposals back, one from Pike Industry, on who we received our sand from last year, and Ambrose Brothers was another proposal that we received back, as well as Joe and Steve went and visited Campton Sand and Gravel to see what they possibly could offer. Based on the evaluation of the proposals, Joe has chosen to first move forward with Pike Industries. And the reason for Pike Industries is they do deliver the sand to the highway shed down below. And that's screen dry sand, and it's a triaxle delivery for that. And that cost roughly estimating at $38,375. And as a backup to that, in the case of needing sand immediately, Joe is proposing 1,000 yards of winter sand from Ambrose for $13,500.
So how does that work with Ambrose? Do we get, is that an up to, or is that they're actually going to?
That's just what we
1,000 yards?
estimated if we had to go down there and pick up sand.
Okay, so
We-
that
all
one's
of our
estimated,
sand-
but the other one is,
You're lucky
that
to
one's
get
actually going to get delivered.
Right.
You're lucky to get it.
I understand.
So we're hoping that Pike is able to fulfill everything we need, but just wanted to have a backup in the event that they
Yeah,
could.
those prices are fair.
Yes. And again, basically the same prices as they charged us last year.
Charge us by the ton or by the yard?
Well, Pike is by the ton, and you probably get about 1.25 tons per cubic yard. So it's probably $10 a yard. That's pretty fair for delivery.
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the Pike Industries screen sand with delivery for the sum of $38,375.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
I'll make a motion to accept the pricing for Ambrose Brothers for additional sand as needed for, I'm assuming this is up to
Yes.
$13,500.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oh, is there another one coming down?
Oh, yeah.
One more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Like that one.
Okay, that's all the purchase orders. Appointments. Stephanie Pike, we have a letter here from her that says, should I read the right one? Dear Select Board members, I'm writing to express my desire to be reappointed to the Plymouth Parks and Recreation Commission. I've been an active member on the commission over the past 5 years, helping to organize and oversee many events that the Parks and Rec departments have been able to offer to our community. I've enjoyed supporting the many opportunities our department has provided Plymouth, and your support is very much appreciated. Please accept this letter as my official request for reappointment to the Plymouth Parks and Recreation Commission for another term. Thank you for your consideration, Stephanie Pike.
I move that we reappoint Stephanie Pike to the Park and Rec Commission.
I'll second.
Just a comment question. Because we've separated
Yeah.
parks and the recreation department,
That's probably.
we have a combined commission? Should
Wow.
we,
Yeah,
We have a
does
combined.
that make sense, not make?
it's probably fine, because that commission is overseeing both things. You know, we
Right.
could create two commissions, but then,
You have divisions.
yeah, so they just have two different units to pay attention to.
Okay.
Doesn't feel awkward. Ted, you've sat on that commission for the past year.
Yeah,
Has
they're,
it felt awkward overseeing two different departments in that way?
no. They cooperate pretty easily.
Yeah. Good question, though. Any other discussion? Did we have a move in a second?
Yeah, we did.
We did, yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And we have another reappointment, also to the Parks and Rec Commission. Dear Board members, I'm writing to express my interest to join the Plymouth Parks and Rec Commission. Being involved in this organization will fulfill a desire to continue to support our community and the children that live here. As a mother of two school-aged children who have been involved with Parks and Recreation for many years, a member of the Wellness Committee at PES, as a local small business owner, I would bring a unique perspective to this organization. It's a joy to work with people in supporting our children and the community they live in. Parks and Recreation plays a role in both development of children and support to families. I would be honored to be appointed to this commission. Sincerely, Melissa Scagliarini.
I will make a motion that we appoint Melissa Scagliarini to, for reappointment to the Parks and Recs Commission.
Oh, thank you.
You have a second?
Yeah, second.
Any discussion? This is like my just personal minor pet peeve. Parks and Recreation Commission serves all of Plymouth, not just children. This is,
Good
this is
point.
parks and recreation for adults, for, concerts on the common, the children are very important, and I'm glad that that is Melissa's driving.
Originally, the
But-
mission was children, initially.
Yeah.
It started out as the Plymouth Youth Council, and then, it was strictly young people, maybe in elementary school.
Mm.
And now it's expanded. It's just,
I think we used to think more of recreation as a children's thing, maybe, and it is
Definitely.
expanded more
changed
as
with the times.
changed with the times. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
want to
And we
forget
have
that component when
35-year-old
we think
children.
about Parks and Rec.
I think they've done a
Nothing
great
to do
job
with it.
expanding it too.
They
There's
have.
some
Yeah.
They've-
great offerings.
They have. Yep. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Go. That one. And wait, no, not that one. I got another one.
You start from the bottom when you read that email, Zach.
Yes,
Thank
I
you.
will. I'll read it upside down.
Thank you.
Do you want me to read your follow-up?
No, it just is that you don't have a true letter from Matt.
No, I'm going to read it from the middle out, I guess.
Okay.
So we have an appointment to the Advisory Budget Committee for Matt Yetton. Hi, Ann. Subject, Budget Committee. Hi, Ann. I would like to participate and join as a member of the Budget Committee. What do you need from me to proceed with this? And this is what we needed.
Approved, yeah.
That's right.
So here we go.
So, okay. I'll make a motion to appoint Matt Yeaton to the Advisory Budget Committee.
Second.
And happy to have Matt on that. He's already attended a couple of those meetings, and he's got good perspective. It's nice to have him there. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's one. All the appointments, and we have a policy to discuss.
We have,
Payroll direct deposit. Yep.
Okay, so in front of you tonight, you have a payroll direct deposit form and policy. As part of the updates of our policies, we felt it important to create a policy specifically for direct deposit, wanting to make sure that everyone understands what our responsibility is in the finance office. In the past, we have accepted email, we have accepted faxes. In the future, we will not accept those any longer. They have to be original signatures. And this all came out due to the need to update our policies. And on the back, you'll see the actual policy, the actual form, I'm sorry. In the past, we've never asked for the employee's phone number or emails, but through our training with Certified Computer, they talked about phishing, they talked about a magnitude of other things that can happen.
Just,
So we actually follow up.
I think one thing from a financial liability assessment is that this way, it has to be a handwritten signature of the employee. Whereas right now, like Ian said, we've contracted with certified computer consultants, and every week, each employee gets a micro quiz, and it's about a different subject, whether it's phishing, whether it's dark web, whether it's scam emails. And this is one of the topics that has been addressed on that, on how much money has been scammed through fake banks sending in and doing a direct deposit request for an employee who everything has an electronic signature and so forth. So this is another measure in making sure that our financial liability process is strengthened to assure that each employee has to sign off and each employee has to be contacted with regards to any request for direct deposit or change of direct deposit.
Seems reasonable to me.
Do we run our own payroll in-house?
We do.
Do any employees request to have a check?
Yep. We still have
Maybe
probably
10,
10 or 12 that still get a check.
not
every-
many.
Everybody else is on direct
Most
deposit.
of those are like Park and Rec, and some firemen.
Per diem firefighters, call firefighters.
Most everybody else,
Part-time?
Yeah, yeah.
most everybody
And
else is direct.
selectmen?
Is there-
Yes.
Is there a minimum that you need to do like direct deposit?
Now, you guys could do this as well,
Huh,
if you wanted to, and we'd appreciate that, because then we won't
Yeah.
have to worry about you cashing or losing.
we get checks?
You get paid.
I was thinking like,
Deposited mine today. How long have I been holding that?
You just deposited it, I'm surprised it's any good. Well, less than 90 days.
90 days.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about
It's amazing
transport.
how
Another one
many
coming in a
people
couple weeks,
lose
so-
checks
Perfect.
or don't cash them.
So it's been
Go
90,
through- We have
almost
to go
90
through a
days.
process.
Yeah.
It's a good thing you did something,
Yeah.
otherwise it would have made a nightmare for you.
Oh, that's right.
Somebody gave
We
me
would have,
6 months ago.
So for the direct deposit, we print stubs? Or is everything online? Is that?
no, you actually get just a piece of paper that says how much went into your account.
Okay.
It looks
Get a
just like a
direct
check,
deposit.
but advice, yeah.
So nothing online to view?
I don't get an email.
This is a good idea. Glad you're doing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
excellent.
You made a motion, right? Or do we
I'll
already
make a
do it?
motion that we accept this new direct deposit policy and form.
Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion?
Marianne, that was a chance.
You started.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Who do these belong to?
Probably Bill.
Me.
They belong to
They
Dan.
do.
And Broadman, yeah.
Signature file review.
I don't have anything else.
Well, that was an easy one to check off.
The only other thing, Zach, we have is the parade permit.
Oh, the parade.
So we can get that.
Parade permit.
Someone sign?
Yeah, on the last page, there's, if you,
By signing,
I
you
need a
agree to
motion.
come and be a participant in the
it's from
parade.
the Plymouth
Quick
Holiday
motion.
Parade
I
Steering.
need a motion to sign the parade permit.
Okay,
Did we?
um,
I'll second.
right here.
Any discussion?
Any place.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? Neil abstained.
No, I,
He's signing the parade permit.
I just track mine here.
What time is lineup for that?
Ooh,
It's on that. I'm
3:30 or
that?
something, but I
It's early.
forget.
30.
For like 3:30 for a 5
No, we just,
o'clock?
we blow in at like
Right.
5 o'clock.
5:05.
Yeah.
Hey,
Go right to the front.
Line
and
up down by the river there, by the bridge.
yep.
In
I
advance?
assume that they'll place us near the front, behind the police car.
I will make sure of
Banner
that.
or something. so
We
they
do.
know.
Well, we have in the past.
here,
Can we get
one behind you.
Do we? Well, then there you go.
Right.
We can carry that.
All right.
How do it?
Do you want me to cut like a birch tree or something like that? And we can hang it on that? So
Sure.
I've always been doing those now.
You know, can we get a truck and put it on the side and then we can sit in it nice and warm?
I mean, my truck would fit.
I can put you in the back of my truck. We can ride on the top.
Yeah, no, chilly.
Well, we've already agreed that it's going to be 45 degrees and
Yeah, we could wear our vests.
We did agree. Yeah, it would be very confusing if we wear our vests.
This is true.
I don't know if it's gonna be
Yeah.
45
Zach.
tonight.
It's gonna be 45 at 5
John
o'clock.
is here
John Christ is here.
for a presentation
something.
on the, the
I'm trying, Neil. I'm trying.
planning commission. I didn't know if we
You want me to
could,
just do that first? Yeah,
just in
let's do
case he
it.
wanted to.
Let's do it. John has suffered long enough.
I know.
Let's
Oh,
let him go first.
That's right.
If and we're still ahead of schedule in terms of how some of these meetings used to go.
It's true.
true.
Very true.
Remember
We're
some
gonna pay the
torture.
price someday.
I know those planning board meetings can be long sometimes.
Yeah.
too.
This is giving us a run for our money.
This is a big meeting.
This is a short one. The
Yeah.
budget ones are going to go long.
I can be here after midnight.
Hey,
I've been here
I need to
after
be in bed by
midnight.
9.
Not this night.
I agree, Mary Ann.
What's John coming to talk to us about? The planning commission?
Lakes Region Planning Commission, you wanted
Yeah,
an
Perlac, a
update?
little Perlac update.
No?
No,
Nope.
that's Plymouth River. This is
LRPC.
LRPC. yes.
LRPC.
LRPC.
So there actually is some news lately, and I mean, a lot of what we do is like we see presentations and such, but we have had some votes lately and made some decisions. Probably the biggest one is the regional housing needs assessment. So each of the regional planning commissions is mandated to update their regional housing needs assessment, and the Lakes Region Planning Commission has done this. And there was an ongoing discussion, as I think Bill probably knows, about whether or not to include the workforce housing fair share numbers. And do you want any background about that? What these are?
Sure.
Well, there's the workforce housing law, which says that each community should provide its fair share of workforce housing. So housing that's affordable, like for ownership to a family of four making 100% of the area median income, and a lower percentage for rentals. And there was a little bit of nervousness among some communities about including that fair share table in the housing needs assessment. And so this was kind of going back and forth, which is why it took as long as it did until like last month to actually finally adopt the regional housing needs assessment. And so what Lakes Region Planning Commission decided to do was adopt it without the fair share tables. And there was some back and forth about that, and there were some commissions who, or some towns, I should say, who were commissioners who were saying their town wouldn't be on board if it included these tables for concerns about A, how the numbers were arrived at, and B, what the possible legal implications could be of having those numbers in there and published. There were also towns who wanted them included, and I brought this to the planning board in Plymouth, and we talked about this, and we talked about some of the arguments, and we mostly agreed, almost unanimously, that with one kind of person on the fence, that they in fact should be included. And so our position was, yes, they should be included. It's part of the workforce housing law, and it's the numbers are all out there already anyway. They've been published as a draft for about a year. And it, in some ways, looks like we have something to hide if we don't include them at this point. And we're not doing bad anyway as a town. Well, we all agreed that either way we should adopt these. That we'd prefer to see the numbers in, but if it came to that, we'd vote for it with the numbers removed as well. It should also be noted that the state gave each of the planning commissions language that they could include as a disclaimer about the numbers being up to date and accurate and all that. And many of the planning commissions chose to include the disclaimer and include the tables, whereas LRPC decided not to include the tables. So this is why it's taken as long as it did,
Gotcha.
because of that discussion.
Some controversy.
I don't know if you have any input from the executive.
No, I
on
thought
that.
the executive director wanted to stay away from these numbers, not include them, so. But I guess that he couldn't mandate it.
Yeah.
So I guess, we decided to go forward with it, but.
I will say that the arguments that were given for not including the numbers didn't necessarily seem like fair arguments in some ways, and fully representative of how the law is being enforced. That being said, so I mean, personally, I was more upset by not really having a fair conversation about why we're doing this. But ultimately, we adopted the housing needs assessment, which is really important right now, given where the state is and the country is in terms of housing. And speaking of housing affordability, I was actually kind of curious if I can kind of flip the table a little bit here. The MS1 numbers. Do we know how they broke down in terms of percent increase in property valuations between residential and commercial?
I can email you that.
Okay, I'm just kind of curious, everything obviously went up a lot. I'm just curious how much, if at all, the balance is shifting in terms of the load that's going to residences versus commercial properties.
So just quickly, I mean, these are numbers off I'll just read them to you so you can sort of write them down or interpret them. Residential went from 232 million to 345 million. And commercial went from 124 million to 154 million.
Okay. So it seems that was a lower increase than the residential increase.
Sounds that way, yeah.
Yeah.
So that may in fact affect housing affordability as well in Plymouth.
Yes, and manufactured housing went up quite a bit. The numbers are smaller, but went from 3 million to 6 million.
Okay.
So doubled
Wow.
in terms of manufactured housing value.
Thank you. So another thing that has come before the LRPC is the adoption of a SEDS program. So this is the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, and a lot of RPCs have adopted this, and it just means that we're going to develop for the region an economic development strategy and become an economic development zone, and it streamlines some of the application for funding for infrastructure and other things as well, hopefully. And interesting part of this, and I didn't know the full background of this going into the meeting, and so we did vote to adopt that, and so we should start to see some action on that coming soon. But an interesting part of that is that parts of Grafton County are already part of the North Country economic development plan, and so Plymouth, for example, apparently had some availability through the North Country Council in this regard, and on the other hand, we're not represented there. At least now we have representation as part of a Lakes Region SEDS program. And whatever that may bring to us in terms of other opportunities for funding and such, and just having a development strategy.
Did North Country Council reap benefits for being able to do that, like in advance of us? Or
I don't know.
yeah,
I'm not really sure. It seems like a good move just to adopt the program and see where that goes. Does it have some kind of guidance from the region in terms of economic development?
North Country Council had to reconstitute itself.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Any other questions for John? Any other comments?
I don't know if you want any HOP updates while you're here as well.
Sure, why not?
So the HOP program is going strong, and we had some really good community outreach, and in the community meeting, for example, great attendance at the high school. And so we're moving forward with a bunch of, and this kind of brings us to the planning board as well, moving forward with a bunch of potential amendments for this year, going to public hearing for the planning board. And we're also looking to, for the committee to continue to look forward, because we basically realize at some point there's a lot we want to do, and to do too much in 1 year is just going to be a bit of a burden on people understanding what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And so we still have some stuff we're thinking about, and we're trying to get some language to hold us through to another year before our contract is out with Barrett Planning Group. And also some updates to our subdivision regulations and such as well. So we have a bunch of potential amendments coming forward, and as a separate kind of track, things pulling us even beyond that we couldn't quite get together for this year, and that might just be too much for 1 year.
There has been great participation, and just walking around the room at the last community meeting, listening to the groups talk about the different proposals that were there. It was very active and very positive feedback, I thought.
Yeah, totally. And one of the things I'd love to see is to hope, like, when we don't have a hired consultant, to hopefully keep some of these channels open. And it's probably a little bit easier with the report every Friday, to kind of keep people in the loop. And so we have some good outreach strategies and some good channels open now, and hopefully we can kind of pull them forward for future work. So it's not just, whoever happens to show up to one of our planning board meetings.
Keep the momentum
Yeah.
going after this.
including for the Economic Development Project and other outreach.
It's great.
Great.
Thank you for chairing that committee, too.
John, you have a very diplomatic manner of presentation.
You have to sometimes, especially talk about housing.
Neil, do you want to give your planning board update next, in
I
case
have
there are
been
any?
out of action for 6 weeks.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
I mean, really, the conversation at the planning board meeting has been focused around the Housing Opportunity Program. They do have a meeting this Thursday.
All the work sessions have been about potential zoning amendments
Right.
for housing.
Yes.
We do still have our business sessions where we're looking at applications. And for example, we're looking at an application right now on Fairgrounds for a storage unit facility again. And we've had a bunch of ADU applications and some other various things in the past couple of months.
That's
You have a
another
meeting-
storage unit facility.
It is, in addition to the one on Page Street.
And you have a meeting this Thursday,
Meeting
which
this
that
Thursday.
is part of
It's a
it.
continuation of
Right.
this new storage facility proposal.
In the CIP.
And the CIP public
coming up for
hearing this
public
Thursday
hearing.
night.
CIP public hearing is
Public
this week
hearing on
as well.
Thursday, yeah.
It's all good stuff.
Yep,
Yeah.
Good stuff happening at planning board. Good.
all right,
Thank you, John.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I keep you waiting so
Plymouth Village Water and Sewer.
Meeting tomorrow night. I did want to take 1 second. I don't know if you folks have gotten emails or seen social media posts about a show called Hometown, put out by public local PBS here, NHPR. They just, I don't know when it happened.
I've seen
They
it.
put out one for Ashland. Maybe I'll send the links along. They are now looking to do Plymouth and interviewing folks in Plymouth. I think they're gathering people now to interview. Basically,
All right,
just
we-
volunteer. They'll be doing some interviews starting December.
Yeah, we included in the newsletter, looking for people who would want to participate. The Historical Society is kind of in charge of keeping the ball
Gotcha.
rolling on that. So I know Dan has done some work on it, as well as the Historical Society. But the interviews do start in December, talking about Plymouth and its history.
Yeah, they've been telling stories and whatnot.
It's great.
Neil, how much time do you have?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Wow.
put Neil in a room.
Frank too, and
Weekend.
just-
Frank too.
That's it. We're
true.
done. Night, John.
Campus Community Council?
No meeting planned, at least not until spring.
Not until spring. Plymouth Elementary.
I admit it, I missed it because it fell off my calendar. My repeating calendar thing elapsed.
These things happen. Plymouth Regional High School. I actually have all my stuff with me this time. Two big things from that meeting. I don't know if anybody wants to look at this, but I'll pass it around. This was the first draft of the budget, looking at an increase of $883,000 for this year, which is just over 5%. The board did ask that, and this just summarizes the reasons for it. One of the top being health insurance, and they shared this little handout, which it actually felt like we could probably use this when explaining some of our budget stuff too, about the medical rates going up over the past 20 years. The board did ask administration to sharpen their pencils and try to get a little closer to 3%, which is what the board has set as their goal, to try to get close to 3%. So we'll see at the next one if it comes down a little bit or not. The other big topic was athletic fields. They voted to proceed. They voted to proceed with a design project for lights on the football field, lights on the soccer lacrosse field, and turf on the soccer lacrosse field. So not moving forward with the project, but moving forward with with a design. So they had the money in the budget this year to do design for that, and then they could, bring it to the town to see
That
if.
included track as well.
Well, that was one of the hot topics.
Yeah,
It
right,
does not, that design, because
Include
they
what? I'm
have.
sorry, I didn't hear
Oh,
what
a
it-
track.
a
Does
track,
that include
okay.
a track? Yeah, historically, that's been a big desire from the community to have a track. They had done a design on it many years ago that ended up not getting general support. The main issue previously was, well, it was expensive, right, which is always an issue, but based on the placement of where that bank is and the space they would have to put a track around the football field, they couldn't get it 8 lanes wide. They could only get it, I don't know if it was 5 or 6, and to have state meets on that track, it has to be 8. So they said, well, we could build a track, and they did the designs and they did the plans, and it would still be great to have even a 5-lane or 6-lane track there, but it wouldn't be one that could actually have state meets on it. So
Was
that was a
the
concern.
lacrosse field like too small? Much too small or something?
I don't
Or
think there's enough space around it.
could they got a hill too, for that matter?
They have a hill, yeah. But reasons, they were going to bring that plan back after they do this design plan, because that plan, there's nothing wrong with it. So we're going to bring that back for discussion at the board. Major reasons for doing this, a lot of those teams, as the year gets longer, you start having practices and things cut off.
Yeah.
If you ever been to any soccer games, they make the varsity team play first, and then the JV plays second, and about halfway through the season, well, those games start as 40 minutes, and then they turn to 30 minutes, and then they turn to 20 minutes, and then they stop having JV games. So in terms of developing a lacrosse program, it's tough. And then the turf, having a turf field would allow them to have, play games in the rain, allow teams to practice
early,
whenever, because they're not going to tear up a turf field. They would allow, community sports on that field, because again, it's not going to tear up the field. So they actually could use the field more. But
We had kids, and we always hoped for like a turf field, but now sports, NFL's like looking at like why are we having turf, because
those people get hurt.
ACL injuries.
so I still think a turf field would look great around this area though.
It would be great to have one around, I think, too. And they end up playing on Holderness's field quite a bit. And they did talk about maybe for track, maybe they talked to the university. The university doesn't have a track either, so maybe they do some sort of deal where instead of trying to build one at the high school where it doesn't
Yeah, right.
fit, they work with the university to get one built somewhere that they could share. I don't know. There was a bunch of conversation, but
University does have a track. It's indoor.
yeah, I was going to say, that one's scary.
I have a question for you. Is the enrollment at the high school up?
No.
It's down?
Yes.
Where is it now?
I don't have the number.
It's around 700 and something.
Any update on principal search?
Going down.
No, they didn't give an update, I don't think. Not that I caught. Yeah, big topics were the budget and the athletic fields. Yeah, that's it for
When
high
I
school.
played football, we had a mud bowl. That's what the
And
field
leather
looked
helmets.
like. I'm telling you, it was a mud bowl.
All I can think of is like Lights and Lanahan. They never mixed. So things have progressed.
Conservation Commission?
They meet not tomorrow, but the following Tuesday at 7, 21st.
All right, capital improvement, Scott already gave updates on that. Parks and Rec,
I was not able to attend, but Lisa did provide me some notes. So there is a scheduled trip on 12/9 to the Boston Pops holiday concert at SNU. They have some openings, but almost full. They're working on justification for a new van lease agreement to have during budget hearings in the town meeting with the budget committee support. Let's see, the rec youth basketball registration is ongoing. Numbers are strong. travel basketball program has started with clinics and tryouts. All 4 full-time rec members were fortunate enough to be able to attend this year's National Recreation Conference held in Dallas from October 10th to 12th, where they had a lot of great takeaways for the sessions they attended. There was over 9,000 professionals in attendance. They're working on the holiday weekend festival parade, etc., with the add-on of an indoor movie partnership with PD and Puzzler. 8 teams compete to do a 500-piece holiday puzzle. Let's see. Budget's in a good spot, according to this, and they're looking at ways to creatively save on overtime by using flex time and changes in the way they handle facilities. And their next meeting will be the week before the town meeting in March. I'll have to make note of that.
Because it's a long time off, easy to forget. Parking.
I would say nothing, although I'm curious where that will fall within economic development. Obviously, they're, as I said before, they're looking at Main Street more, and that clearly is a concern. So I assume that will come up where it goes from there. I don't know.
Sure it will.
Energy Commission?
Energy Commission.
All right, so I actually took some notes. So I'll extend this another 10 minutes. So the IRA application for 10% of the cost of the solar array, that the mandate was to have construction started by the end of the year. So Jack and Ted are going to be putting, digging holes in the location of the array so that could be used to put up the backboard for the array. So that will count as starting construction. And I guess we'll still get the 10%. There was a lot of discussion about formulating a townwide survey, and it's going to be available at town meeting. The survey will probably, well, there was a lot of discussion about exactly what it might query, but there's going to be 2 questions, perhaps. And the first question would be a list of items that the Energy Commission should be focused on. And, you know, and then the second question is, and that first question is going to be like a ranked choice as far as, you know, what they should be, you know, focused on. And the other question, I don't know, I didn't take that great notes, but that's going to be worked out at their December meeting. Boom.
Whatever that is.
Any questions for Bill about energy?
Come on, ask me a question.
No, you covered it all beautifully.
Nailed it. We also talked about advisory budget, economic development,
Already
covered
discussed.
Chamber of Commerce.
I could say I didn't. I could say it fell off my calendar, but I did not attend the last meeting.
Did it fall off your calendar?
It did. It fell off my.
All right off. Perlac.
Crazy.
You weren't there.
No, I wasn't.
And I didn't take notes.
I
And,
wasn't there.
It was just an amazing meeting. And
We reviewed the water testing results.
We what?
I don't know.
No,
I was making
water
stuff.
testing is like complete. But yeah, we were looking at different projects, one of which was, again, the expansion of Owl's Nest and the purchase of White Mountain Golf Course, and their intent to go through the planning board to put through the vineyard. I guess the vineyard is pretty much an accepted project, but there still is like a alteration of terrain permit that they have to do, and some of the information that they're presenting is kind of questionable. So, but it seems like they're going to push through. So, no stopping it now.
Police and fire building assessment.
We are waiting for the report back from the Turner Group on the assessments and the interviews that were done with the police and fire department.
right. Public comments.
Other than another wonderful meeting,
Thank you, Frank.
We don't have anything else?
See any notes on non-public?
Neil, it just
There's
didn't
one?
come over. Yeah,
The
we need
last second on
Okay.
personnel.
I'll make a motion to enter non-public in accordance to RSA 91-A:3, number 2, A personnel.
While you're at it, will you also throw D on there? And I'll
I'll throw D
since
on
we're
there
gonna-
as well.
Since we're gonna talk, we'll talk.
Other paper.
Second on that?
Second.
I'm roll call voting this. Ted?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Zach, aye. Marianne?
Aye.
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 I don't remember if I had to, but it's late.